All right, thanks everybody for being here. I'd like to call this meeting of the Berlin Boston Regional School Committee to order. Reminder is being recorded. Your image and voice will be recorded. Could you all please stand and pledge allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. Which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, so the way we have tonight's agenda meeting set up, we have a public comment up right now. That public comment is available for anyone who would like to speak to anything non-budget related that's on the agenda. Anyone here to speak about anything non-budget related that's on tonight's agenda? That's a surprise. No, all right. So we'll go forward. Any communications to share? All right, nothing. Can I please have a motion to consent agenda?
So moved.
Megan? Jess? Anyone like to discuss the consent agenda? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Yes? All right. Al, that brings us to the budget, I think. I had a lot of thoughts and things to say, but why don't we just get into it?
Okay, sure. So is the irony not the last meeting we had at the auditorium, there's maybe about 5 or 6 people there. We so apologize that tonight's meeting, we are sitting remotely, so I apologize for not having it, going forward with having a different location. So Joe or Aaron, can I ask you to start out with slide 20 for me, please, on this presentation?
I can drive through it.
No, sorry.
24?
Go back, sorry, go on, keep going back. Right here, please. Okay, I just would like to start out with this quote. Anyone that knows me is sort of my thing is having some high quality quotes in here. I think this is not lost before we start having this conversation. The best way to predict the future is to create it, and the best way to create a better future is by investing in the education of our children. And I just want us to stop and I really stress the importance of this quote. We really need to invest in the education of our children. They're our future. Our students that are in our classrooms today are our future. They're our teachers, our future plumbers, our lawyers, our doctors, our nurses, our electricians. They truly are our future. We need to make sure we're financially investing in them. So before I turn to our budget presentation over to Aaron, I want to discuss some exact figures. Just to go reminders on how we're here at this point. On March 11th, school committee voted on the budget presented to them with a 6-0 vote. And it read the following: that the Berlin Boston School Committee voted to approve an FY26 operating budget of $24,393,973 and an FY26 capital budget of $4,059,702, resulting in a total assessment of $10,585,313 to the town of Berlin and $14,206,353 to the town of Berlin and Boston.
I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. So again, once again, school committee voted on that of a $24,393,973. You hear me about that? No one's ever told me to speak up. Since that meeting took place on March 11th with school committee, myself, school committee, Aaron Osborne, our director of finance and operation, had several meetings after that. Our first meeting was with the Boston FinCom on March 17th. And then with Berlin on March 19th, and Berlin was a combination of FinCom and Select Board. Both communities, since we presented this budget to them, came in with a lower figure that was voted on by school committee on that March 11th date. Since that time, we've been working for days and days and hours with our principals, our directors, and our school committee. In the union as well, too, having conversations with them. To have conversations in the best way to meet the numbers that were given to us by both communities. Tonight, Aaron and I will be presenting a budget that aligns with the dollar figure that the monies were given to us at this time. We've taken the money that has been given to us by both communities, and this budget you're gonna see tonight is going to reflect that. Again, I can't stress enough the work that our principals, our directors, our school committee, and our director of finance and operations have done. Please know that I want the principals and directors at this point do not support this budget we're going to present to you. This is a budget that has huge impacts on our students and staff, and particularly students that attend Berlin Memorial and Tohoto Middle and High School. We present this to school committee tonight in the community in hopes of getting direction on our next steps, along with your support, to let people know that we need and should want more for our students and our staff. As I said the very first day that I walked into this district, we are a very good district, but we strive to become a great school district. As Jim Collins says, as eloquently as he does in his book, Good to Great, the enemy of great is just being good, and we're not going to be settling for good. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to our start of our presentation, and Aaron and I are going to walk you through our budget presentation. Again, please know that this will align with the monies at this point that were given to us by both communities. But this is a budget at this point that we're presenting the school committee and the communities that principals, directors, and myself as the instructional leader do not support at this time.
I have a quick question. We've got people waiting outside that can't even hear anything you're saying. Can we get a speaker system in here? We're supposed to be in the auditorium and no one can hear us now.
Agreed. I live in the auditorium.
It's not in the auditorium, we had it scheduled for this room. We have a.
That's not what you announced
No, that's not what the announcement said.
What announcement?
The announcement was all over Facebook.
And
Well, whether or not it was in an announcement or not, why not move it to the auditorium?
We had it there 2 weeks ago and nobody showed up.
Okay, well, everybody's here
Okay,
now.
hold on. So, we're at this point, to move everything that we have set up, because we're live streaming this as well too, will be very difficult for our tech, we're not gonna interrupt our meeting. What we can do though is pause for a second and bring some more chairs, and I can get the custodians here, and you can bring more chairs. But for us to move it, there's the logistics of getting this into people in this room. So, Lisa, do you have the walkie-talkies and just get?
no,
Yes.
If we move these two, yeah, it's over.
We pull these back just about 4 inches. Or okay, we just pull this back about 4 inches and then slide that cable in. We slide that
Hey, Joe. Joe, you have a microphone?
The sound system's been dismantled. When that program went away.
All right.
Jess, the sound system's actually good. When you brought it to the auditorium, it's back that up.
Okay, you good?
Acting up.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Well,
All right. The majority of the speaking will be done by Aaron, who's at the front of the room, so he'll be speaking to all of you, so that should help the situation, but we're still recording, we're good?
okay.
All right, continue out, please.
Okay, so I hope you're not asking me to repeat everything I just said, but at this point right now, I'm sorry. So at this point right now, Aaron and I are going to go over the budget presentation. I can't stress enough to those people, again, not a budget that we're supporting at this point, but this is what we're doing to make sure it's aligned with the dollar figure that we're getting. What we're presenting to the community and the community, and what we're using our support to get what we feel we need to deliver a high quality education for our students. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Aaron Osborne, and him and I are going to walk you through these next couple of slides for you. Aaron?
Howdy. So given we've got a few more people than we had on March 11th, I'll take a moment to put in a quick plug for the musical on April 11th, right? In the auditorium, not here, Beetlejuice Jr.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. I tried to give a plug then, but the two people seemed very interested, but maybe we'll have more people this time. So I will walk you through a little bit of where we're coming from and then where we're going. For those of you, if we go to, whoops, I'm running this show, aren't I? So when we put this together for March 11th and we had our budget hearing, we came up with assessments for the towns. Operating, we were hoping might be in line. We knew the capital numbers were high. If for those of you who've seen the budget, we had a number of items that were blacked out or grayed out. We didn't necessarily expect to get those items. One of the things we want to do is make sure that those items are recognized as legitimate capital items that are needs for the district. And those will be pushed down the road in many cases year after year after year. So these are the assessments. Again, you'll see that sort of capital assessment is really, really high, and we understand that. So the same thing for Boylston, right? Very high capital assessments, operating assessments, a little more tenable, right, for total assessment. So after we held that, we've had a couple meetings with the towns, and I think this is in line with the direction we got from the towns. Berlin asked us to reduce the operating assessment that we were showing by $207,000 and reduce the Berlin Memorial Capital to that $237,000 number, so reduce it by a little over $1 million. Again, we knew a number of those items. The roof wasn't necessarily something that was going to get picked up immediately, nor was solar on the roof going to get picked up immediately. But we want to put it on the table and make sure people know we're looking at that. Boylston runs their assessments a little differently. So Boylston's request was to reduce the operating plus Tohoto debt and capital assessment by $685,372, a combined $500,000 increase. So just so you know, that plays out. I'm not sure everybody has spent a lot of time digging into the regional agreement and digging into how those assessments work. And that is pretty well embedded in the March 11th. I'm not going to dwell on all the ins and outs of the regional agreement. But in order to get to these numbers, what do we need to do, or what did we need to do? So we had already made a number of cuts to get to that March 11th number. We looked at, we made a commitment to eliminating those contracted paraprofessionals. If you've been around, you've heard us talk about that a number of times. We had 12 or 14 total contracted paraprofessionals throughout the district. We're going to make a real effort to hire our own people. We had some staffing cuts that weren't specifically identified because we hadn't had the opportunity to have some of those conversations. So you'll see the health teacher, literacy coach, library tech, with a resulting addition of a para/recess aide that would pick up some of the recess aide coverage that had been budgeted in previous years.
Aaron, if I could just jump in for a second too. So eliminating the health teacher. So the way the curriculum is lined up in the state of Massachusetts is health and physical education go hand in hand. So although we're eliminating that health teacher position, and I'm trying to be real careful and respectful to people that are in the position. So no, we've had these conversations with principals and directors, and they've had it with the staffing as well too, but we're still talking about people here. But that health will be taught by the physical education teacher, which goes, like I said, hand in hand with the curriculum. So the library tech, although we're eliminating the library at the elementary level, we'll have some of the things coming in that we're working within the library, looking for a lot of parent support that will be helping out in that library as well too. But also we'll will have the dual role of being a recess aid monitor, something that I've heard from both communities want in the playground as well too. Sorry.
Yep, sure. So the collaborative tuitions, we receive a circuit breaker reimbursement. I've done a deep analysis of the available funds prior to that March meeting, and realized that we have the potential for some rollover funds that we could use. So I've committed some of those resources. You'll see that in a couple different places that we've made that commitment. There were some changing needs of students moving to from Berlin to Tohoto. So you'll see some changing needs for special education, transportation needs. Those are recognized in here as well. So then if we were to need to meet the cuts that the towns or the numbers that the towns have, the first thing we do is, or not the first thing, but the first thing on this list, I apologize, it's not the first thing we do, but to go down the list in order, there is a classroom, I believe, John, correct me if I'm wrong, 27 students that would be in grade 2 next year. We would add a paraprofessional to that classroom for additional support, resulting in some savings. You will see band across both schools. I'm not sure, 100% sure that FTE from school to school is 100% accurate, but the numbers bear out. We have math tutors and literacy tutors at the elementary level. We would eliminate both of those at Berlin Memorial. You will see that there's some movement in a music teacher at Tohoto. This is that bumping. You'll see that is a negative reduction, right? So it's actually a positive. When we eliminate a position, right? Our teachers have bumping rights based on their seniority. So we have a presumption that Tohoto, the person in that Tohoto position would have bumping rights to move down potentially to an elementary position. I've done sort of a deep dive looking at just picking away every little item I could. Prior to some of those first hearings, I looked at some bigger ticket items. I've been pouring through every single small item to just see what we can pick at, right? Because, if we can find 5,000 here, 5,000 there, eventually we might save a position. So that's what I've done. OPEB, I don't want to get into OPEB, but it's a contribution towards retiree health benefits. It's a liability we have. It doesn't impact anything operationally. I'm comfortable. There's no mandate that we put a certain amount, but we have to put something into our OPEB. So you'll see across the board, I've cut our OPEB contribution by 50%, saving us, about $25,000. Again, not profound, but in the aggregate, a lot of this might save a position in the long run. I took a deep dive into long-term substitutes. I spoke with John a little bit about that. We felt like we could manage that. Anytime we're looking at something like this that could create a potential liability for us, there's some risk involved, right? We're taking some risk when we cut some of these. But I think as John and I talked, we felt like we could cut that. And then I made some asks of the principals, and they largely stepped up to look at some potential cuts in overall supplies, right? If we're looking at the potential for cutting staff, we might as well look at it across the board. And how can we look at some of our supply lines and things like that? There were definitely some lines that had already been cut. I didn't touch those. I focused on the lines that we hadn't really dug deeply into yet. So going to, and I almost said.
If we could step on that slide just for a second. So I want you to appreciate eliminating that grade 2 classroom, having 27 students in that classroom. If we eliminate that position in grade 2, right, we're going to feel that all the way around, right? So year after year, you're going to have at this point would be one of each grade. So that second grade classroom that's going in there for next year, there'll be one class of 27, then the year after and the year after. But then we're also looking at the classes that are remaining behind. So we'll have a big impact all the way around when you're eliminating down to that one class size.
How is that even logistically possible?
So, sorry. So just the other part that you need to be, again, none of these cuts are what we're supporting, right? But this is what we need to do at this point. The other part you need to know is that the two most important things that you'll hear me ever say is high quality teachers and low class sizes. Those are the two things that we really need to be focused on. But right now, you just need to know that the impact of having only one of that grade we'll see year after year after year. Not only that, but the curriculum that's taught during those grades as well too, extremely important. They say those first 3 years up to grade 3, you learn how to read, right? And then the kids read to learn. But those first 3 years up to grade 3 are the most crucial years in learning, teaching kids how to read. Along with that goes that literacy tutor and math tutor, huge pieces. Now, people might think of tutors are just students that need that additional support and help. They do, but they also have those kids that are excelling as well too. So when we're eliminating those tutors, that's crossing all of our students that well. And not only are we eliminating tutors, but we're eliminating class size. Huge impact on our students there, so we need to be mindful of that.
Al, can you hold on a second? So
Sure.
we can't take all questions from the crowd during this, but that's something I know the committee wants to know about, the grade 2 teacher. You're essentially playing musical chairs every year. Explain how that works.
Yeah.
And tell me, when that class goes off to Tohoto, what happens?
So a couple of things, right? And I'm real careful about going into people and personnel here, but if you have 2 veteran teachers, I'll say teaching in grade 2, right? When you have to make reductions, you just don't say to that particular grade, here's where the reduction is going to take place. Because of seniority and that whole piece, the teacher might be displaced and be teaching another grade. That affects that teacher teaching, right? And has to learn a new curriculum as well too, and not mastering of that as well too. And again, I'll say as those kids are traveling up, that change will keep happening where we might have 2 of one grade and then 1 of another. And how do we keep those veteran teachers and keeping them teaching at what they're experts at, right? We want to make sure that they're strong in the curriculum. The backbone of any educational system, and this is someone who's been a curriculum director for the city of Worcester, is the curriculum, and having that strong curriculum and teachers' knowledge of that curriculum. So them having to learn multiple curriculums, that's a tough thing. We want our teachers to know the scope and sequence. We want our teachers to know what should be taught in those grades and become experts in those grades as well too. And then constantly looking at teaching different grades, it's a hard thing for our teachers. That's also an opportunity that we might lose good teachers because they want to be able to settle in that one particular grade. They want to get good at their trade. Moving all over the place is a tough thing for a teacher, so we need to be mindful of that. When they hit the middle school and high school, again, that large group, I'll say it again, small class sizes, high quality teachers. You can't make up those 2 things.
What happens come, whoever the school committee is in 2029 discussing the FY30 budget? What happens to that budget when you can't have one classroom because we know the classes are growing, we know more people are moving into town. We have projections, 30-40% growth at BMS student body coming up?
Yeah.
What happens? Do we just automatically put it back, or what do we cut then? What happens?
That's true, and it's a really tough thing to do and make a cuts in these classrooms. It will definitely impact our students, and at some point in a long time, you're gonna be paying it later. You're gonna be paying it with our students that aren't having that individual instruction, and you're gonna also be paying for it because eventually you're gonna need to put that classroom back in there. The other part is we have 27 students in that classroom. All it takes is 1 or 2 new students to move in, and then I'm at 29 and 30. That's just completely unacceptable. But please appreciate, we're down to the bare bones. People say there's a lot of extra, and I've worked in districts where sometimes there are extras, right? But when I look at the extras, there aren't any, right? When I look at the staffing at the central office, when you look on, it's called Radar for Department of Education, we are one of the lowest number of people that are working in central office when you're running a school district. Like, there was no secretary today, right? Like, Aaron and I are running these things off. That's why we're running late. Like, we don't have that additional support. So we're cutting everywhere we can. And there's nowhere else to cut right now in Berlin except for these grade 2 classroom teachers. And this is the point we're at. And again, it's unacceptable at this point.
Can I just say something too about whenever you cut a teacher, and we learned this last year, I think the way it works is since we're one district, it's low man on the totem pole, so that might not be in Berlin. So we could, even though we're cutting a teacher in Berlin Memorial, we could be playing musical chairs. Is this correct? Where it's the low, it doesn't matter if you're in BES or BMS, it's the lowest.
So there's two factors. It's seniority in the district, right? Depending where in the union, it verifies that, but it's also license and
Licensing.
certification,
So
right?
if there's a lower elementary ed licensed person in Boylston, it could mean we're actually getting rid of a teacher in Boylston. Now, we're not gonna get rid of that head, but that specific person could be the one out, and there should be shifting, meaning someone from Berlin might have to go to Boylston Elementary.
I haven't looked that deep into it, but certainly that's a scenario that.
I know last year
It
we,
might not be the case
it
this
may
coming
not.
year, but when that class moves up to third year, maybe that's.
Yes,
the case.
shifting.
When it goes to fourth, but John, did you want to say something?
Just real quick to add on to what Al's been sharing, one of the other factors, we're talking about a school that was designed to be small. You know, the rooms are smaller, the coat closets are a joke. You can't fit 3 adults in the coat closet. It's, you know, we saved money. This is the school that when it was built, they only primed the walls, they never painted them. So, you know, we're always looking for ways to economize, and I get that, it's a small town. But what will happen now is you'll lose things that kids have come to rely on, flexible seating, no more tables, it'll be rows of desks, just like when you and I went to school. The other thing I wanted to make people aware of is we talk about moving forward, starting in 3rd grade, our teachers are departmentalized, which means that one teacher teaches ELA and social studies, the other teaches math and science. If we lose, and I would argue, and I think my teachers would argue, that is part of the reason that our kids are very successful. They have teachers who are very deeply invested in literacy, for example. And if we lose that and have to have one teacher do the whole thing, that will also impact student learning and student progress. It's just another loss and a really bad idea of a cut.
Thanks, Aaron. Sorry to delay you on that. Go ahead. Please.
So next slide gets into the very specific operating assessment to the towns. I went through how the regional agreement does this on March 11th. If you haven't seen that, you're welcome to go through the excitement of the regional agreement, dig through all of that. But, you know, we start with the overall budget, add in the district costs, take out Chapter 70, a share of Chapter 70, a share of Chapter 71. So Chapter 70 is just general state aid for schools. Chapter 71 is transportation reimbursement. There are formulas within the regional agreement that define how you calculate this. I encourage you to feel free and take a look at that March 11th. I explain it out. I won't dwell as long on the other slides that go into the calculation, but just so you're aware of how that generally works. So we get into Boylston. So, you know, interestingly, because of the way the assessment formula works, and the numbers we received from the towns and where some of those cuts need to be made, Boylston is in a better situation this year in terms of where things stand. So we made some cuts preparing for this in March, knowing that we had a lot in capital. As you saw in the first slide, Boylston considers Tohoto debt and capital plus their operating assessment as part of their overall operating piece they contribute. So as we weren't able to do as much on the Berlin side on capital, we did have to sort of collapse the Tohoto capital, which put more money into sort of the Boylston pot. Again, this is all based on the regional agreement. It's very exciting. I encourage you to give it a good read. But, you know, you can see a lot of similar cuts.
Can I interrupt you, please?
Hmm?
Your comment about it puts more money into the
Yeah.
Boylston pot. Can
Yeah.
you just explain a little further? Because some people are gonna think
Sure.
that means you're gonna take the money we're gonna spend in Berlin and you're gonna give it to Boylston.
No.
I know that's not what
Yep.
you're doing, but some people are going to
Yep.
think that.
Yeah, so I'm trying to think of how to explain this. Because Boylston considers Tohoto capital part of their operating budget, the money we had in capital now flows back to general operations, right? So because of the numbers we received from Berlin, let me get to really quickly to Tohoto capital. We have collapsed Tohoto capital down to just replacing some middle school furnitures. So the split between the two schools is roughly 65-35%. So you're really talking about $9,000 to, I think, to Berlin, and then $16,000 to Boylston on this. So that sort of collapsed that number that would have had to be part of the Boylston assessment, and that moves into operations as far as Boylston is concerned. So the money that wasn't in capital, and we can't fund in capital because Berlin has indicated they can't cover that relative to some of the needs at Berlin that are a little needier. So if I get into Berlin, that should be Memorial, I apologize. The elevator controls are an absolute must. That is an ADA compliance issue. If that elevator is shut down, in many ways, we are shut down. So that's an absolute must. Cameras are a security priority for the district. You'll see them at Berlin and Boylston. So this really was pretty close to the limit of what Berlin indicated they were capable of doing. So Berlin takes capital out of their free cash, and basically they told us we're capped out on free cash, so they really weren't able to do anything at Tohoto. So I know it seems a little wonky, but every town handles these things differently. They have a right to do that.
It's all laid out in this, it's all laid out in the regional agreement, and that was decided 5 to 6 years ago. And one thing you probably heard, Aaron, sorry, my mother would be yelling here, talking to people we aren't back. One of the things that you heard us say is it's time to revisit it, right? It's been 5, 6 years now, and we need to revisit that regional agreement because we're following exactly the way it's laid out and financially in terms of payments as well too. So all that's laid out in the regional agreement. So please take a chance to look at that, but it's something we definitely need to revisit all the way around.
So Aaron, is what you're saying, basically, we were given a certain number to meet
Yeah.
in Berlin.
Yeah.
You've done all you can at BMS, the elementary level. You gotta spread some of that to Berlin's share of Tohoto.
Fair enough.
Because of math, the way it works and the formula for the assessment, if you cut something from Berlin and Tohoto, you gotta do a corresponding cut of something from Boylston. Except for the fact that Boylston has actually said, no, we can cover that amount. Don't necessarily care where you put it, but we can cover that amount. So what you're saying is,
Yes.
that's then going back down to the elementary school because of the agreement saying that we're gonna fund the elementary school separately 100%. They're willing to fund schools for their students, and that's why we're seeing a bunch of things being added back here at the elementary level. That's right.
Correct. So to some degree, in order to make the numbers work, we have to make cuts at both Tohoto and Berlin Memorial School, right? It wouldn't be equitable to do it at just one, and there's no way we could take it all out of one. Now, the reality is the minute I cut money from Tohoto, 65% of that results in a cut to Boylston's assessment. So sorry, yeah, that's a better explanation as well. So as we're making those cuts to Tohoto, it is only saving 35 cents on the dollar to the Berlin assessment, and 65 cents then goes to Boylston, which then frees up additional funding that's available, but I can't put it back into Tohoto. Otherwise, that will cause an assessment to Berlin. So I have to put that money in Boylston Elementary.
And we appreciate the money that Boylston's given us, and so since we can't use it all at Tohoto because it would impact Berlin, that's why you're gonna start seeing some of the money that we're thankful that Boylston gave us will be seen in the Boylston Elementary School, and that's what you're gonna see take
So
place.
Boylston's Tohoto portion is now shifting to the elementary. school.
That's correct.
Fair enough.
I think you heard 3 different
That's a-
people explain it 3 different ways, so
Yeah.
hopefully that was really, you can tell we all were working together on this, trying to really get a good understanding of how this works.
My apologies, I threw that. So getting into Boylston, you'll see we had some initial cuts, but again, because of the way things had to go and some funding had to flow back to Boylston Elementary, we have been able to even add a few things. Looking at band, the sort of the decision was made to keep that as a cut across both schools, but then we looked at what could be added back in terms of support, what could help Boylston Elementary with some of their academics. One was returning the literacy coach, one was adding a special education teacher, some additional social emotional support that might be in the form of some adjustment counseling, maybe some BCBA services, things like that. You'll see that there is some money increasing the budget, again, Berlin Memorial and Boylston, for that music teacher that might be bumped to the elementary, to the elementary level. And then you'll see an equitable change in the OPEB contribution. So both schools have adjustments to that.
We really try to be equitable and make any reductions that we were doing. Again, that health teacher up there in Boylston, same thing, that should be taught by the physical education teacher, right? So that falls right along the lines with the curriculum. The part that, the library tech, same thing, that was one position that we shared across both Berlin and Boylston. That's why we made that elimination there, right? Because of the being shared between both. But that literacy coach that we're adding, the special education teachers, when we got our report, but the gap that we saw between our students with some special needs and the MCAS performance, there are some concerns. And we've talked, Cindy and I, and we've talked as a school committee, we know we got some work to do, and that's why we want to bring in that literacy coach. We know we're working in that ELA piece we need to. We need to bring some things in to make those scores move forward and make sure we're getting Boylston exactly where it needs to be. But we need to be able to support our teachers and need to be able to support our students with those moves. And so that's why we felt the best additions were these. Please know that we sat with principals at all times and making all these decisions. They were not made in isolation in the central office.
So the tutors are still at Boylston, but
Yes.
they're gonna be eliminated from Berlin, so the math and the literacy tutor will
Correct.
still be in Boylston.
Correct.
Along with a literacy coach.
Correct. So then, same assessment formulas. Encourage you to take a look at the presentation from March 11th or go to the regional agreement. It's all laid out there. Very exciting stuff. Have I sold it well enough yet? Tohoto regional budget. So here's where we get into sort of those shared pieces. So we started out March 11th, eliminating some of the contract paraprofessionals, athletic director, the staffing pieces we didn't share necessarily entirely. Now we're sharing a little more fully now. So athletic director, science teacher, a special education coordinator. Somehow it looked like I hadn't shown the eliminated department heads and team leads. That was in the budget and that was shared with staff. But somehow I didn't show that on March 11th, so I'm making sure it's shown here. And then there was some additional circuit breaker I applied through that analysis I did that helped offset some costs for out-of-district tuition.
Aaron, before we go on to that second half, that if we could just go over that the athletic director, it's not going to be a full-time position next year. It's going to be a stipend position as it is. So we'll still be having, obviously, sports. We're not the school committee or the administration says, you know, we're wiping out sports, we're wiping out arts, and everyone comes to rally for that, but they're really not true cuts. These are really true cuts that we have to make, and that if we had to live it, we do not want to live it, then we would be able to have to be able to do. Eliminating the science teacher, that's a programmatic cut at Tohoto, right? That's a huge piece. Eliminating the special ed coordinator position, we're not eliminating the services that still need to provide. That's going to be following our director of people personnel, our assistant principals at the high school. Eliminating department heads, still going to be able to work with our department heads, but that's going to be assumed by Sally, who was our curriculum director for the middle high school. So we're trying to be really strategic and being very mindful of we're not trying to really eliminate them, but we're just adding more and more to people's plates before eventually it's not off the wall and doable as well too. But those are true science cuts, those true athletic in that special ed coordinator, a huge impact on our district as well too, without having that service being delivered at our schools.
Yep.
Sorry.
Alrighty. So the additional cuts, we would look to, there's an admin assistant in guidance. We'd look to eliminate the position, but try to reassign the individual. The next line is the music teacher we've discussed. We'd cut a music teacher, and I believe there would be some bumping involved based on seniority. We try to look at that as much as we can ahead of time. We don't always know everyone's licensure as we're putting this together, but it seemed to us that this would be the case. Reducing that OPEB contribution I've talked about before, reducing supplies, textbooks, IT repairs, and copier costs. Nursing substitute, again, I dove into and looked at the past 3 years of nursing substitutes, and it seemed like we could get some savings there based on trends. Again, always some risk when we're cutting that stuff, but I think this is a reasonable risk to take. Foster transportation, we have a number in for there. We very typically have some degree of needs in foster transportation. We're not always sure what that need is going to be. So we've cut what we've budgeted for that by $5,000, thinking we could take a risk. We're hoping for a warm winter. We're cutting oil a little bit. We'll walk around and I'll set the thermostats back a degree or two and hand out some sweaters. But seriously, if you will, some of you were in some of the early iterations of the budget, saw me mention that I felt that oil, looking at going back 3 years and trending, that was over budgeted in prior years. And so I took that back. I can't remember how much, but anytime you're doing that, you're taking an educated guess, right? You're taking a best guess as to what we're going to use in the future. As I looked at it again, I said, can I cut that 5,000 more? Sure, I can. Let's do that. And if it means salvaging something instructional, let's go for it and hope we have a warm winter.
But just so as you can see, we're really, really being mindful about those reductions we're taking. We're really looking at every opportunity. I mean, 5,000 here, 5,000 here, 4,000 here. Like, we really are trying to really look at what we can do, what reductions we can make, so it's not impacting our students and our teachers. But they truly do impact. Let's be very clear. They all impact one way or another, but what's that direct impact? Sorry, Lisa.
I do want to thank you for highlighting that. I really want everybody to see that there are 5 full-time positions being eliminated at Tohoto. This is going to impact students. This will impact their day-to-day. We are hopeful in that we can manage things, but I don't think that's a really excellent model for education, is trying to manage. We're trying to grow. We are trying to lift up. We are trying to create the next generation. We're trying to get these students into whatever position they need to be in for after high school. And I'm not going to say college, because that our horizons are broadened. But there's 5 full-time positions being eliminated, and that will impact what happens here.
So to Al's point, if you look at the bottom, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items, count, it's late in the day, that's $45,000, right? Our hope is that as we pick away at those things, right, that'll salvage a position throughout the district. Every little bit counts. So I don't necessarily think that, finding a couple thousand here and there is going to save things, but if we keep doing it, we keep fighting for this, these little bits, eventually they add up. So Tohonto's assessment formula is a little more complicated because you have the involvement of both towns. You have the calculations for the chapter 70 and 71. And then you get into each town's minimum local contribution and their sort of above minimum contribution. And I thought those looked a little better last time, but the Berlin is highlighted in the pinkish and Boylston is highlighted in the bluish. Not as clear here, but I think in the auditorium it was clear. I know, I'm probably being. So as we get into the total Berlin operating assessments for 2026, we come up to a total number based on this budget, right, of $8,157,099, a dollar change of $356,224, and a 4.57% increase. That's right around the $207,000 reduction that we've been asking. It might be a hair over If we have some more money to put in, we certainly can. Boylston operating assessment, same thing, same calculation. Total operating of $12,293,679 for a total change of $420,956. You will see in a few slides how that plays out with that capital number, that capital and debt number, and the amount that Boylston said they could cover. So now as we get into the capital items, right?
Aaron, I'm so sorry.
Yep.
You and I used to, as you can tell, Aaron and I worked together for a long period of time. So people, I know you did a great job on that March 11th date, but can you just give a little definition to people that are here about what really capital means, right? As opposed to the budget itself as a whole?
Sure. So capital items are typically the sort of major fixed assets of the building. Sort of the definition of that can be flexed a little bit. So in the past, student and staff devices have been considered part of capital. I wouldn't typically consider those fixed assets, right? They move around a lot. Students carry them around, staff carry them around. But oftentimes you end up putting them in capital because you don't have funding in operations, and you might have some flexibility year to year in terms of, well, if they don't give us 50,000, maybe we could take 35,000 or something like that. You can play with it. More and more districts are really endeavoring to move devices into operations as opposed to capital. Many years ago, right, your average computer was $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. Now a laptop or Chromebook is $300. It's very mobile. It's very breakable. It's almost, considered a disposable in some ways with a short lifespan, right? 5 years, give or take. So these are largely things that are fixed assets, but sometimes things bridge that. I've seen school districts do curriculum in capital. Again, not really where it should go in my mind, but that's something that school districts, when they've had to come up with money for something, usually capital is covered by many towns through the free cash process. That's sort of the amount of money they have when everything is all said and done at the end of the year, and they have some excess cash. Exactly what that feels like, right?
Thanks, I didn't mean to put you on the spot with the definition of that. You did a great job with that. The other part, remember, the Berlin Memorial is owned by the town of Berlin, right? Boylston Elementary is owned by the town of Boylston as well, too. So, but we need to make sure that we're taking care of these things. And as Aaron will go through, that number one is we need to have it done, right? In Berlin Memorial, it needs to have it done so we can keep our schools open.
Yep. So again, if you were at some of the earlier sessions, all those other items, the difference between that 237 and 1310, those are still sitting on our capital plan. We have an ongoing capital plan. We're building a 10-year capital plan out of this, and those will get kicked down. You'll see them next year. You'll see them the year after. You'll see them the year after if they don't get funded at some point. We'll come to a head with things like the roof and what have you. I don't think the roof is in dire jeopardy now, but it's kind of at that end of life, and we want to make sure that we're addressing it and sharing it. So $237,000, I believe this is what the town of Berlin said they could cover for Berlin Memorial. So getting on to Boylston, we did hear from the town of Boylston, and they seem to think that they could do the $216,500. This includes some water pump, window repair replacements. You'll see cameras at both schools. We have a lack of cameras for security purposes at the elementary. I'm sorry, I'm not on mic. I thought you were moving your head, and I'm like all over the place. So there are also some fobs. There's some doors that need some fob replacements. Fobs are little things you use to open the doors electronically. That's not a big part of that, but it's a few $1,000s built into that. Student staff device replacement. Some of the exterior brickwork needs to be repointed. It's getting in rough shape. And then accessible playground equipment for the school.
So I know one of the things that you've heard us say at every meeting we went to is we really need cameras for the safety and security that are happening not only during the day, but also after hours as well too at our schools. It's extremely important. We have it at Tohoto, but we don't have it in Berlin and Boylston. It's not only for the protection of our kids and students, but also our facilities. And I know one of the questions that we received multiple times is, well, I have the Ring camera. Why can't we just put a Ring camera up at our schools, right? And I can watch it from my Cape home and still see how everything's going on. But I'm going to defer to Joe. Sorry to put you on the spot, Joe Pizzato, our interim director of technology. Just if you could give us just a short, reason why we're not doing Ring cameras all over the place instead of what we want to do here, Joe.
So we already have a current system in place that wouldn't be compatible. So it'd be bringing in, say, Ring, for instance. If we brought in a system like that, one, we wouldn't be able to handle the number of cameras that are needed to monitor our schools. Two, the security and the infrastructure wouldn't be supported at the level for the security that is needed as far as protective rights. Our insurance wouldn't cover the Ring camera if something was to happen. And just the infrastructure alone the Ring service wouldn't support the broadening of the system that we need, that we can monitor, that would tie in, we'll be able to give access to our police, give remote access to our safety coordinator and fire and EMS. And although those cameras are good on a smaller scale, they're just not built for commercial grade on a larger scale to cover everything that we need to do, including, some of the systems that we're looking into have the AI built in. So if something was to happen, we could open up the platform, type in what we're looking for, and it would bring up everything that matches that particular search query and pull it up on all the cameras, so we'd be able to track and monitor and everything like that. So although those platforms are good on a smaller level, they just are not adequate for the size and the need that we would have at the schools to provide the security that we're looking for.
Thanks, Joe. Sorry, I'll put the spot as well. I warned all principals and directors before we got down here that I might be putting them on the spot, so they're all sort of prepared to have me ask them a question about it. Thanks, Joe.
Yeah.
Sorry, Aaron.
So, Al, did you
Of course,
give?
Lisa, you want to pull that up? Please. We're having some visuals here as well, too, for you guys as well.
This is a middle school chair. Joe, would you mind sitting here?
Poor Joe. That's one thing I didn't
know,
ask
but
him to
he's
do.
sitting right there. He's right there. Thank you. Okay, that's not an appropriate chair for many of our middle school students. So it is, the correct chairs weren't bought originally. I don't know what to say. They just, those are elementary
Thanks,
school
Joe.
chairs.
So, yeah. So there are many.
Hold on, please.
Can they at least be
Sure.
repurposed for the elementary school?
Yes, 100%, absolutely.
So there are many eighth graders walking around this school who are Joe's size, my size. I've sat in those chairs. It's comical. It's absolutely comical. We originally had around 225,000 in for this. Lisa looked at what replacing all of the middle school furniture would be. Given that we came to realize that might not be tenable, we said, what's the bare minimum we might get by to allow those eighth graders who might be Joe's size or my size the opportunity to have furniture that's sized appropriate to their needs. We came sort of at this number. It's not there's no science behind it. It's a round number that seemed to work. It will continue to come up. We will continue to try year after year to replace this furniture over time, but this at least puts a dent in it, and we can start working on right sizing some of those furniture. And to the point, the existing furniture will certainly be able to replace furniture at the elementary level.
The environment for a student is extremely important for them to learn, right? And one of the things is at least being comfortable sitting at an adequate desk and chair so they can learn, right? And for them sitting at those chairs, it's again, for our eighth graders, it's unacceptable at this point. So that's why this is on our capital.
Yeah. A lot of our desk workers have the benefit of a standing desk even, right? I have a standing desk. I think it's fair to think that students could have something that's comfortable to sit in. So going into total capital assessments, This is where we get to Berlin, Boylston, total debt assessment. This is the debt that sits on this building. So we have two bonds. One's a 2018 bond, one's a 2021 bond. I believe both of them were subject to refinancing at some point when bond rates were low. I know I refinanced a bond around 2021 and we got a really nice rate on that. I'm imagining similar here. So those are the totals for debt and capital. Moving into the total Berlin assessments, operating assessment at 356,224. I think that sits right about that 207. I think it's maybe more around 210 reduction, but we're just trying to play with where we can be. The Tohoto debt and capital, an increase of 61,605. Elementary capital, a change of 93,868. You can see the totals under FY26 for a total increase of 511,697, or a 6.06% increase. You'll recall March 11th, our total assessment at that time was $10,585,313. A big piece of that decrease does come in capital, but we've also made some efforts that you saw on the operations side. Total Boylston, I spoke to the operating plus Tohoto debt and capital. So when we're talking about the dollar change, Boylston gave us a total of $500,000 available. If you add $420,956 to $79,044, you will come to $500,000. So that matches what Boylston suggested. Elementary capital, we have a modest reduction, but again, Boylston has met the needs that we put forth in that 216,500 for a total assessment of 13,312,299 based on these figures versus a total March assessment of 14,206,353. And we're back to Al's quote. I'm going to attribute it to Al going forward. Unknown, I'm just going to call it the Al Gannon principle. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Aaron.
Yep.
And just one last thing, I know that I'm paying attention to comments and things that we had the opportunity to meet with individually school committee members today. Again, had an opportunity to meet with the union. We met with principals and directors, and we're hearing some of the information. I want to make sure I'm addressing it. That might save some of the public comment as well too. I know another concern that was brought to my attention was we have some contracted positions in our district working this year, but it's FY26, there's no contracted positions. I would say again, you've heard me say multiple times, everybody needs a coach. Tom Brady even needed a coach, right? And we needed those contracted positions this year. As you're well aware, we were left in sort of a financial situation when we first came on board. Since Mike put it so eloquently at the March 11th meeting, the whole financial office has been turned over since we came on board in late August. Everyone knows that first round of paychecks and financial things that went out were sort of messy, and we got them back in place, but we needed some support, we needed some help. So we did bring some contracted people in to help us out, right, both at our schools and in our central office. Those are not in the budget for next year at all. And I know I've heard a couple of comments about that, so I want to make sure I address that as well. So this is our budget presentation that we present to the school committee as a whole in the community. And again, it's nothing, it's everyone in our admin and principals and directors. We are not in support of this budget, but this budget is in line with the financial money that we're given from the town of Boylston and the town of Berlin.
Thanks, Al. Aaron. We're going to do public comment now, but before we get to that, this is not for school committee deliberation, but I want to just make sure we have a few things out there. I want to ask Aaron some questions, and John, I want to ask you some questions. Statewide, the last 4 or 5 years, there have been issues, not issues, but rising costs, right? So we know here, we were told a few years ago, out-of-district placements, 14% increases, transportation, 17% increases. This year, we're seeing health insurance, 18% increases.
Yep.
Those are things that can't be cut. They can't be dropped. We pay them or I don't know, what happens if we don't pay them?
Health insurance? I'm imagining we have a few staff here. If your health insurance disappeared, I mean, I know if my health insurance disappeared, I might be a little verklempt.
So those are massive increases over the last 3 or 4 years of things that have nothing to do with
We can't
hiring
control
a new teacher for math or losing a science teacher. We can't control that, right?
Right. Absolutely.
And the other thing, the last couple of years in Berlin, not so much Boylston. Boylston Finance Committee refused to do it because they know better. But the last couple of years in Berlin, to lower the tax hit to taxpayers, we've used additional cash, whether it's from the town or whether it was from the school choice or wherever it was from. We've used additional cash to effectively buy down that assessment. Last year, it was June 17th at the special town meeting, minutes before, we agreed to use an extra $250,000, $250,000 to lower that assessment. So when you see a $511 increase in assessments this year, you can't think of that as a $511 increase. It's really a $261,000 increase because we used cash last year to buy it down. If we did not use that cash, we would have it today to offset something, but we would have had higher taxes last year. So it's a give and take when you use cash to fund an ongoing budget, operating budget. It's hard to do. Because we use that $250,000, it was a combination last year of cash and cuts at BMS. I think, don't quote me on the exact numbers, but I think $230,000 applied to BMS and roughly $20,000 to Tom, or whatever the numbers were. But John, did that create any challenges for you this year?
This budget?
No, this current year that we're, like today in school, there were challenges related to that.
The challenge is that we lost important support people. We lost, for example, we didn't hire a literacy coach. The most important thing we do in elementary school is teach children to read effectively. But we don't have somebody to support the work that teachers do. As hard as they work, and I have just amazing teachers in my school, we were always working to do better, always working to reach that next kid, always working to challenge those kids who are reading chapter books in first grade. And that was an essential position that we lost. We cut back a lot in terms of like little support things that made lives easier, that teachers didn't have to worry about, things that they didn't have to buy on their own or ask parents to donate. I remember last year, you wanted all the supplies paid for.
Hey, why not?
It almost worked, but didn't.
Missed it by that
Close,
much.
close. But then it follows to them. The other thing, thank you, we lost our only kindergarten para in a class size of 20. And I'll say it again because it makes me really cranky. When 2 or 3 years ago, when Boylston had 20 kids in a kindergarten class, it was an emergency. It was the end of the world as we knew it. When we had 20 kids in a kindergarten class, we've lost the only kindergarten para we had.
Shared kindergarten parents.
Shared kindergarten. Thank you for chiming in, Mrs. Bennett.
You're welcome.
It's true.
It's true.
Hold on, so you're saying a single classroom of 20 kindergartners,
Yep, one teacher.
one teacher
One teacher.
was a challenge.
It was a challenge.
Okay, so now we're considering one classroom of 27 second graders, not kindergartners, but second graders. I know a little bit about that particular class.
Yes, you do.
Is that gonna be, that'll be pretty easy, though, they're second grade.
As their first grade teachers would tell you, maybe not so much. The challenge, there are a couple of challenges. One is that we teach differently than we used to teach. So when I was in second grade and dinosaurs roamed the earth, or you were in second grade, right, it was rows. And everybody had a desk and the desks were all in rows and it was all very 1950s, right? We were training kids to be workers in factories. Now we're training kids to work effectively together. So it's long tables, different types of chairs, even chairs that are too small. We will take the chairs. Those are the changes that have made learning more effective for today's kids. And by plopping 27 children in an undersized room with an overwhelmed teacher, and both of my second grade teachers are excellent, but that's a big change, is going to be hugely disruptive to learning. And as I've said, as they move into third grade, there's a whole different set of disruptions where we can't focus on really effectively teaching a couple of things. You know, my third grade teachers are just out of this world good. But it's partly because they can focus on major parts of their topic. And we'll lose that. Not to say, and I think at some point I have to say this, the other piece that I think I'm struggling with personally, and I know a lot of my colleagues from Berlin Memorial are here, it's just so friggin' discouraging. I get, and I think when we're calm and thinking it through, I get that the town of Berlin is struggling. They made a ton of cuts on the town side. But at some point, you know, there has to be a decision made about how much do we actually value education? Okay, that never happens.
So what you're saying is last year, through a combination of cuts and extra cash, $250,000, we created a couple challenges for you. This year, we're talking about another cut of, we're well into some cuts, whatever the number is, 400, another 200 on top of that, losing a classroom teacher. I intended just to be talking about the assessments, right? So your assessment number, Aaron, you showed a 6.06% increase in Berlin. If we, you know, the reality is we use cash to cut that off and cut some things, and use cash. Cut that number in half, we're at 3.01%, which is under what Boylston's assessment is going up. Because Boylston didn't use cash to buy down their assessment the last 2 or 3 years. I just want to make sure that's in people's minds when we're thinking about why are you going up so much and Boylston's not? You're giving your money to Boylston. Why? Like, that's the question.
And
those questions have happened. They've been asked to you directly. They've been asked to us. They're going to continue to be asked. So we need to make sure we understand why math's the way that it does. And it's because artificially adjusting numbers using cash and an ongoing operating budget. Some of that 250 that was cut last year to buy it down, that those expenses that they need to happen again. 2 years before that, it was an additional amount of cash from the town side for, we don't want to get too much into it because it involves special ed, but it was to cover a new need that came up, I think, and there was confusion as to whether or not that need would continue. It did need to continue. And then there was confusion as to, well, why does the need continue? We paid cash for it for 1 year. We should be done with it. So it was an issue. We don't need to rehash it, but to understand why are my taxes going up all of a sudden so much? Well, because they haven't gone up as much as they truly should over the last couple of years. But at some point, you've got to pay the taxman for this.
The other piece that it just, and I know school committee is well aware of it, as well as our communities are, we're in the middle of negotiations, right? So we're in the middle of teacher negotiations. So all of that is a figure that we're still uncertain about. It's a really working group that we're all working together, both school committee and the union. It's been going really well, but there's still a figure that's unknown there for us as we're going through that process that we have to be mindful in our budget as well too. So when Mike talks about insurance and we talk about all these unknowns and things where we can't control sometimes, these are some of the parts that we have to be prepared for as well.
And so we often talk about the elementary schools, and I tried to express this on the floor of the town meeting last year. But when we are asked to reduce the budget for the Berlin assessment, we have to reduce our budget by like 3 times the amount. So if we want, does that make sense to everybody? Yeah. Because it's a 35-65 split. So if we want to reduce if we want to reduce Tohonto's impact to Berlin, we have to literally reduce 3 times what Berlin needs to be reduced.
So say 55 cents in Berlin.
Right.
$1 from your budget.
Right.
That's right.
And so another conversation that often happens at school committee is, And so I'm going to plead with school committee not to have this conversation, because I will tell you, I will point you to this. Why are students leaving to Honto? I won't, this.
And so I brought that up when we were in front of Berlin, right? And I still stand this by as the instructional leader. This is a competitive business that we're in, right? If our students aren't getting what they, when John and I were going to school, you went to your neighborhood school, you went to your neighborhood middle school, your neighborhood high school. It's not that way now. And we need to make sure we're providing our kids everything they have at this middle and high school. So when they go out into the world of business, plumbing, electrician, vocational, or they go off to college and universities, they're competitive out there. We need to, and there's still things we need to even additionally do at this high school. We should be creating pathways, but stuff like that costs money. And this is, we're just looking for the bare minimum here, not those extra things that we continue to need to look for. So when people say there's a lot of extra, take it from someone who's been in this job for over 30 plus years. This is a district that does not have a lot of extra. We have barely what we need to go by, and we can't afford any more reductions like we're doing right now.
But Al, I'm gonna get myself in trouble here, but John already swore tonight, so it's okay.
We're not gonna swear. It's split.
To your point about being a competitive district, I was told directly by a person in Berlin, so what, if you want a better school, do what everybody else does, send them to a private school.
And I go back to that original slide. These are our students, right? We want to make sure we're providing everything that we can for them in our community. This way they go off to educations and fields and getting their degrees, and then they come back to be part of this community as well. That's how it goes. That's how our communities grow. We want our kids to go off. Even as parents, we want our kids to do better than we're doing right now. That's what we should be doing as educators. We want our kids to have even a better education than we have. That's our job and our responsibility as instructional leaders, as a school committee. And I have to say, I've worked with a lot of school committees. This is a school committee that really, this year, I can honestly say publicly, they've worked really hard with me in long hours and meet with me at all days and hours and nights, sometimes longer than I need to be at 11 o'clock, 11:30 at night, but asking questions, and they really want to know what's going on. And so I appreciate that, and I support that as well too, because we really want to make sure we're doing right for our children, for the students that live in the communities of Berlin and Boston. This is our future. Back to my slide, right? This is our future. We're investing in them. Sorry.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So next up, if anyone would like to speak about this, to make a comment, ask a question, we're not gonna have a back and forth Q&A, we're not gonna answer your questions live. But if you wanna say something about it, maybe something that we would consider during our discussion, come on up to the front of the room, say your name, and tell us what you think. Yeah, up to the front of the room, please.
Can I go from here?
Can everybody hear him around there?
James Underwood, 10 Brexwood Drive, Boylston, Mass.
Can you speak up a little bit?
James Underwood, 10 Brexwood Drive, Boylston. First thing, what you said about you reducing your tax rate, we understand. We do it every year. We've done it every year for as long as I was selected. We take money to reduce our overall tax. That's the first. Second thing is reducing 5 positions at Honto and putting that onto the heads. Guarantee you have 5 heads for new jobs next year and then gone. So now you're really replacing 10 people in one.
Yeah.
Great.
That's just common sense. If someone's gonna add more work to my workload, and I can go somewhere else and make the same money, if not more, why would I not? With a school system that's not.
And on top of that, have the materials and things we want to provide our teachers so they can do their jobs well, right? We want to make sure of that. I know you're back there. Can we really have everyone come up here, just so we can get you on the cameras and we can all hear as well too? I think it's much better here. So,
All right, do you have more, or you?
Common sense on both of them. Oh, one more. Boylston took and did their parts of their roof on their elementary school. on our own dime, I fully didn't find the money, and he leveraged business. Is Berlin leveraging any of their businesses or taking their capital improvements out of another pot besides the pot that's part of the education?
Good question. So the comment was, Boylston took, different sources of funds.
Yes, we did.
From their budget. They had in-town corporate partners, sharing some costs for the roofs of the buildings and everything that they own.
We outlaid our own money.
And some money from Boylston as well, their own money. The question was, is Berlin leveraging any businesses in their town to do the same for the improvements to their buildings?
And that would be a selection question.
Yeah, I don't know, but we could, that'll be asked. All right, anybody else?
And just one thing on that, and so Boylston also has an MSBA project that we're working on right now as well too for the,
Yes.
right, so just for public information.
Who's next? All right, come on
That
up.
line.
Oh, I got a list.
Sorry, wait. Yeah, here's a list. Bill, you want that list?
Bill's on the list, but you don't,
The number one.
you don't have to be on the list. I'm gonna put your name on the list, Jamie.
Kyle, get my good side. Thank you. I'm going to reiterate a lot of what's been said, and I appreciate all the work by everyone here. The Berlin Boylston Educators Association, Bill Whitehead, president of the BBEA. Gotcha. The Berlin Boylston Educators Association wants to emphasize that we should strive to be a district that attracts and retains quality educators, which simply put requires a concerted effort by administration, the school committee, and both Berlin and Boylston to make sustained financial investments in staffing and programs. Positions have already been cut for next year. Tonight, we're seeing how additional cuts will now be impacting programs. No one wants products or services to be more expensive, but they are across the board. We understand our desire to see where cost savings can happen, but it should not be at the expense of student programs, nor should it be at the expense of the livelihoods of the educators working with your children. Already, teachers in the district have been working with what amounts to a decrease in pay. The average COLA, cost of living adjustment, for the past 3 contract years was an increase of 16.1%, yet the total pay raise for those years was 8%. Additionally, health benefit premiums have increased and show no sign of slowing down. Our rates for this year alone went up 10%, and as you know, they're going up 18% for next year. It is understandable to hear the community wants to spend less money, trim fat where they can, and not increase taxes. However, it is disheartening to have the same community be comfortable with achieving such savings by allowing teachers to work at what effectively is a decrease in pay each year, cutting positions and reducing programs offered to students. Such an approach is short-sighted and will result in a district that families want to pull their kids out of or avoid altogether due to a lack of programs and opportunities for kids. That will be on top of a revolving door of teachers that do not want to stick around because the pay is not competitive. Residents should only want the highest quality from any of their institutions, the schools, the fire department, the police department, and so on. However, the cost of doing business, the cost of living, the cost of anything has gone and will continue to go up. It is an uncomfortable reality we all must face. The result, towns must pay more to maintain the same quality they have come to expect while working to open more revenue streams. Taxes will go up so they can continue to pay for services. Additionally, residents should be contacting local legislators, asking them to advocate for more funding for education. Once positions and programs are cut, it takes a lot to get them back. And even if they do, the seeds of uncertainty and low morale have been planted. We already have seen that as a result of last year's budget process. We hope to see positions that have already been cut with March 11th's budget reinstated in future budgets, and support for our educators shown not through words, but through financial action to avoid having an irreversible negative impact on our students and school community. We urge the school committee to vote to not make additional cuts to the current approved budget, and for residents of Berlin and Boylston to insist that money be put back into the schools. Thank you.
Bill, could you email that to us?
Yes. Yeah, no problem.
Eileen Rodman?
Hi, I'm Eileen Rodman, high school counselor and counseling department head, at least until the end of this year apparently, and advisor to the class of 2026. While I reside in a neighboring town and therefore cannot vote, I'm speaking to the school committee and mostly the townspeople who are here, thank you, and those may be watching, as a dedicated employee of BBRSD. With half of my caseload participating in civic action projects and all students attending recent presentations about making a difference, I could not in good conscience sit idly by while important decisions are being made without speaking up. So the first time I met Superintendent Ganem, and you alluded to this year, back in August of 2024 on the staff day at the start of the year, I remember it clearly because he said something that at the time I respectfully disagree with, and again tonight he said that BBRSD is a good school district, but that his goal was to make it a great district. Now, I'm not opposed to change, and I don't deny that there's always room for growth and improvement, yet I disagree because we are great. This excellence is due to the people within our schools, the programs that we're able to offer the students and families, especially given our small size, and the community with whom we work so closely. And it is those very programs and people that are being discussed being cut tonight or in the upcoming budget. I've worked in several districts over my decades-long career, and one thing that's very special about this one is the camaraderie shared within our small buildings. We support one another, we really get to know our students, and we work toward common goals. And with such small faculty and staff, it also means that we wear several hats, take on multiple roles, extra assignments, and we do so willingly in an effort to do what's in the best interests of our kids. But there will become a time when our necks can only bear so much weight. We are proud of our reputation, yet by taking away staff, not only will our students and families lose services and become disheartened, there will be a noticeable drop in morale of this tight community, all resulting in detrimental effects on our students and their experiences. Personally, I can't fathom how anyone thinks our counseling office of 5 full-time employees serving all students in grades 6 through 12 will function without any assistance from an administrative assistant. But staff cuts and services reductions will significantly harm our currently strong district. And I'm sure you would agree that such measures are certainly not the way to elevate a good school district to greatness.
Hold on 1 second. Is that a written statement? Would you mind emailing that to us?
Yeah.
Thank you. Melissa?
Yes.
Thank you.
So I'm Melissa Tucker. I teach 3rd grade at Berlin Memorial. I don't have anything written down. We kind of last minute this afternoon decided we could no longer remain silent as a staff. Those of you who know me, I actually see some former students in the audience. I have been with our district for 32 years. I have served many roles: 2nd grade teacher, 4th grade teacher, 3rd grade teacher, mentor coordinator, curriculum committees, you name it, I've done it. Head teacher. And to say I'm not feeling a little discouraged the last couple of years, I am. What I'm here to say tonight, though, is representative of what we're feeling as a staff at Berlin Memorial. We're hearing people say, oh, small class sizes, student supports, that's what helps. That's what helps our children succeed. Yet we are considering removing those unbelievably important supports. Our paraprofessionals, our tutors, who work diligently with our students, who reduce the workload of teachers who want nothing more for those children to succeed, but we can't do it alone. And we're questioning why the positions, the roles that have direct impact on students are being considered for cut. When we feel there are other roles and positions that don't directly impact our students remain in the budget. We question, why are we losing? We didn't have a literacy coach this year. Why are we losing a literacy coach to keep a math coach? What's the rationale? If we really want our students to remain where they are and even better, our class sizes need to stay small. And we need those supports. Those tutors go above and beyond. Our paraprofessionals above and beyond. Our special area teachers do a wonderful job. Those are the people that are directly impacting your students. Those are the people I'm sure many of your children are coming home excited about. When I see a student thrilled to see the literacy tutor walk in the room because they know they're going to go get some really good small group attention, there's nothing more important than that. We want to directly support our students. We want staff that can do that. And that's just our opinion, and we just want to make sure that we stated our opinion. I have a big support system here today, that we want nothing more than for our students to have the support that only teachers, parents, and tutors can provide. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if you allow me to make a couple of comments here.
Tough one to follow, Howard.
I'm Howard Drobner, Town of Boylston, and I am the current chair for the FinCom. So what I'd like to do is provide a little education. I am not a teacher, okay? But Aaron, I'd like to clarify the definition of free cash that was mentioned here. So Massachusetts certifies each town's free cash sometime in November of the year before. That is a variable amount. You cannot count on that for operating expenses because you don't know if you're going to get that same amount. So Boylston, we almost always, I would expect probably 95% of the time, we use it for capital items. Things like the repairs at the elementary school, the capital items that are being on our town warrant this year are replacement of a highway truck that was damaged this winter, another 200,000 plus for the elementary school for some repairs. We had put money aside last year for repaving the parking lot that'll get done this summer, etc. So that's
Sure, thank you.
okay.
I was trying to be as simple as possible.
I just want to say, so any town that says they want to use free cash for operating expenses, you are setting yourself up for disaster. Okay. Boylston, we're at our levy limit. So I think everyone knows that at some point you can tax up to the maximum rate. And then after that, you can only do 2.5. If a town sits below its levy limit, it could raise its taxes all the way up. So in some years, some towns have a lot of room and they do more than 2.5. Boylston has been in its levy limit last year. We are at a levy limit this year. And at this point, I don't see us getting away from that for some period of time at this point. So that is one of the reasons why we, in the FinCom, the select board, went to the operating side of our town and the school board and said, hey, this is how much we have. How can you live with that? Okay. What do you have in your capital that we can help with? We have $1 million this year for capital. I do not expect we'll have $1 million in Boylston next year. I have no idea what that number is. It will go down. The major apartment complex on the corner of 140 there is complete. We're not getting any more building permits. That number is going to drop probably a couple $100,000. So we have a lot less capital, free cash, I'm sorry. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you. And I wanted to say to the school committee, the new administration you have at the district office is an excellent group of people to work with.
Thank you. Mel Martinez?
Hi, Mel Martinez, Boylston, 26 Northfield Drive, Boylston. I'm a parent of 3 kids who've gone to Boylston Berlin School District. Got one still in. I'm just gonna be very brief and just talk to like 2 points. The comment about like, if you want a better school, go to private school, struck a nerve because it just feels like public education is under attack. And to me, it's like public education is really important because my life is better when my neighbors' kids are educated. Okay. And this premise that there's an alternative to public education is a lie. It's a scam. Okay. And we really need to just focus on that. My life is better when my neighbors' children are educated. And I think that that's an important message that people need to really put out and reinforce out there. And then I'm just going to walk away with, the fight really isn't in this room. I think most people here, I'm not everybody, everybody's got different ideas, is in agreement about what's needed and what we want. The fight's outside this room. It's at the state level, it's at the federal level. And it's with other mindsets. And you have to really, you can't just leave this room and be quiet about it. So that's all I really wanted to say.
My name is Erica Humphrey. I'm not a public speaker, this is not my gig, but I needed to say something. I'm a product of Boylston Schools, Boylston Elementary, Tohoto. I have 2 kids, a sophomore at WPI, went through Tohoto, my daughter is a junior. The education my kids have received is top notch. I teach in a nearby district and brag about Boylston every day, about how great the schools are, and it's just not even comparable to the school district I work in. I just am here, I just wanted to speak up and urge you not to support this budget. Our kids, our staff, you're working so hard, all of you, thank you for all of your effort. Also ending with, I teach 2nd grade in my nearby district. This is my 24th school year of teaching 2nd grade. I have 17 kids right now in a much less served district. 17 kids, I have paraprofessional support. It's hard, really, really hard to be a teacher today, more than ever. 27 is absolutely unacceptable and should be at.
Yeah, what's good? Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't know if I was going to say anything, but I wrote everything down, so I'll try to be quick.
Name and town, please.
Christina Madero, Central Boylston. I have 4 kids in the district. Before I start, I did want to thank and acknowledge all the hard work you guys have done to unpack all the issues from last year, and you've done an amazing job this year, carving out of all the budgets and making your best attempts at cuts that would impact students the least. The whole process is quite complicated. It takes a lot to understand. It took me a few years involved as a parent to fully understand it myself. And I have a background in finance, so that's saying something. But I have the support at home, and I'm able to come to these things and voice my concerns, help where I can. Not all parents have that kind of support system. So I typically, take this time to make sure that I am doing what I can for other parents who can't be here. I feel like despite the best efforts by the school committee, the towns continue to come back year over year with just less and less. And I feel like from some of the meetings that I watched online, it sounds like they're not going to have much more next year to offer, which is even more disheartening. And I think most of the talk was about operating budgets, and then we start talking about capital expenditures, we need there's just millions and millions of dollars that we just don't know where it's going to come The towns are claiming they don't have these revenues and they don't see the pipeline for it. And if we agree to these additional cuts, we're essentially accepting the behavior that nothing has to change. That couldn't be farther from the truth. Towns have seen the rising cost of education since COVID, and we need to continue to be transparent around what those costs are and keep holding the towns accountable for catching up. We need to continue to highlight what schools need, what they're going to need in the future. I feel like more cuts made above and beyond what was already first proposed by school committee is setting a very dangerous precedent. It's sending a message to the towns that our schools can somehow continue to operate efficiently without covering real cost increases, many of which are out of our control. Towns across the Commonwealth are all struggling to catch up with cost of living increases, and many are seeing cuts. Our town's no exception. If anything, we have more ground to make up. We need the towns to acknowledge these are real costs for operating the schools and that we aren't done catching up from previous years. Both towns clearly have their work cut out for them. They have a lot of work to do to generate new revenues to catch up with all the cost of livings. We're a big part of the town's budget, or the school is, and naturally we're the first stop for cuts. But if we take our foot off the gas now, we're only hurting ourselves. We need to be loud about the cost of education and what we think the cost will be and hold towns accountable for doing the work and going out and finding it. We are in the exact scenario that put schools behind in the past. We need to hold towns accountable for planning and funding the real cost of what it takes to operate schools. Towns really need to start looking at what things cost and acknowledge the deficit in town revenues. If we have revenue shortfalls, then all of our efforts should be put forth to filling those gaps. But instead, schools continue to be asked to cut and to bear levels. Unfortunately, we're beholden to the outdated Prop 2.5, and if we want to spend more than that, we have to go to a full town vote. We're going to need good marketing and clear materials to present to citizens if we have to go to town vote again, and we're going to need every parent to come and vote and voice their concerns. Things cost more. People should not be surprised that it's going to cost the towns and the schools more to operate, which translates into higher taxes. If towns aren't finding new revenue streams, then they're going to fall to the taxpayers. School committee has done a great job of cutting down the budget that was already approved. In hard economic times, we have to tighten our belts, but this isn't a one-time ask to cut back. These are the towns, once again, asking schools to cut back because of years of revenue shortfalls. I've actually decided to volunteer and hopefully help Boylston to try to find some of these new revenues this year because I can contribute so that, you know, me speaking up, you can't have skin in the game issue. Volunteer. Thank you.
There's no one else on the sheet, so just name and town, please.
Kara McNeil, Berlin.
I wasn't expecting to say anything, and it'll be really quick because I'll get emotional, but I'm a first grader, and she'll be going into second grade. And I know that her, along with a lot of her classmates, have tutors who have been incredibly instrumental, and I feel like taking that away from them and shoving them in the class double the size is really just setting them up for failure. And I really, really don't want to see that happen. Thanks.
Lauren, also from Berlin, also with a first grader, so I'm coming second grader.
Lauren, last name, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, Kumi. Kumi,
I just,
C-O-M-E-Y.
thank you, sorry, I'm so sorry.
I won't be as eloquent as those who have had time to prepare, and I won't hopefully be as emotional as Kara, but I will say, we're having a conversation about increasing the incoming second grade class to 27. I did some quick Googling, so please don't quote me on these numbers, but my understanding is that the average second grade class size in Massachusetts is 20. And 94% of second grade classes in Massachusetts is 22. We're going up by 5, this is the proposal, going up by 5 additional students. And at the same time, having a conversation about cutting literacy tutors, cutting our support systems to these students. This is beyond critical. This is, to me, the elevator coming down. We're gonna have a class size of 27 and no support for these students. They cannot possibly succeed under these terms. We come to towns like Berlin, to Boylston, to these kinds of regional school districts to give our students the education, to give our children the chance to succeed, to set them up in many cases in ways that we ourselves were not. We've worked hard to get to this point. I cannot believe we're having a conversation that includes these numbers. I don't know where to get the cuts. This is my first school committee meeting. I've worked in higher education for 20 years. I understand what it takes to fund colleges, to operate colleges. I don't know about the regional school district. I'm gonna learn. I'm gonna learn starting today. And to whomever was before me who says she's gonna volunteer in Boylston, I'm here to help. This is unacceptable. We do not accept this. We cannot have this level of direct student cut. We've got to find it someplace else. We have to find another way. The students need the teachers. The teachers at Berlin Memorial are phenomenal. I've had the experience with so many of them in the after-school program, in the day-to-day classes. We've got to find a way. So I'm here to help. I don't know who wants my help, but let me know.
Jason Paquette, Berlin, got an 8th grader here and a 5th grader at Berlin. I got more involved after last year's budget season, and I was really put off by the conversations. I'll start out by saying this year's conversations have been a whole lot more constructive and productive, so thank you. I've tried to approach this a little more pragmatically. I have kids, which means my tendency is to want to preserve everything. I've tried to approach it maybe a little more rationally. What is the impact to my pocketbook? Now, a big part of that question, I can only speak for Berlin, I can't speak for Boylston. I've only been to the Berlin meetings. A big part of that question is going to be Solomon Pond Mall and commercial devaluation. We don't know what the number is going to be until the fall. But what we can estimate is the difference between the March 11th budget and today's budget. It's about $11 a month. Let that sink in first. Even if that estimate is off by a bit, call it 20, call it 30. If you put the March 11th budget to vote, I, for one, will vote for it because the cuts I've seen tonight are worth 11 or 12 or 30 or 50 bucks a month to me. I'd rather preserve music for my kids. I'd rather preserve the class sizes. I think I'd be having a different thought if the order of magnitude is more like hundreds of dollars. We're talking about a dozen, maybe a few dozen dollars. That'll be on top of, again, that's incremental, the $200,000 difference we're talking about. We don't know the total magnitude change in the budget until this fall when property assessments come out. But that $200,000 we're talking about cutting, incrementally, it's not that much. I would vote to keep it in, and I'll take the tax.
Joe, that spreadsheet that I sent you? Yep. The third tab calls request. Could you put that on the screen, please? So while Joe's putting this up, I actually looked into what Jason is just talking about there is $11 a month. It's pretty spot on. So the towns give us this, last week I had to ask the towns, what do these amounts mean to your tax bill? And they said, go to this website, Department of Revenue. It is not an accurate, concrete, firm number because it's based on this year's data. Joe, if you could minimize the lower corner there, that scale, if you could shrink it a little bit.
Sure.
But this is the DOR website, the link is on the screen here on this file, you'll see it in a second. So I went through every single line item that they were proposing to cut, and I plugged that number into this calculator. And it spits out an estimated range for your taxes, your property taxes. Now, again, not a true indication of what it will be next year, because this is estimate numbers based on this year. The assessments won't be set, the rates won't be set, the splits won't be set until the fall. But both town administrators sent us the same website to use as estimates. And if you scroll up a little bit, Joe, if you move those screenshots down a little bit, so the Berlin ask and the Boylston ask, when you plug those numbers into this calculator, it gives you a range of property values. It starts at 250,000 as a property value, goes up to 1.5 million as a property value. In Berlin and Boylston, I looked through the MLS data. There's a dozen or so properties in Berlin over $1 million, quite a bit more in Boylston over $1 million. Also quite a bit at the low end as well. But this is where I think, Jason, you're probably getting your $11 a month. They tell us to use $650,000 as the average home value in the towns. And based on that, this number plugged in comes to $123.50 annually, tax it to your property tax bill. Divided by 12, where are you, Jason? I don't know. I think if my math right, it's about $11, right? Is that right? So that's what he's talking about. I did this, we're not gonna show it right now, but on one of those other tabs, I did the same calculation for every line item. It's based on a range, it's not a perfect way to do it, it's not, don't take it for gospel truth as to what that's gonna be on your tax bill, but at least it serves as a guide for our discussion later to know, what are we actually hitting? So if you're at the lower end of your property value, it's $47 for the year. At the high end is $294 for the year. Jason says he wants to cover $11, I'll cover $11, I don't know what anybody wants to cover $11, but I just wanted, since Jason brought it up in his comment, I did do this work yesterday, today, and that's what it is. So it's not my numbers, I didn't make it up, it's not my math, it's from the Department of Revenue. If you scroll up a little bit, Joe, that's the link right there. That's directly taken to it. So anybody can go do it, plug in your town, plug in the dollar amount. There you go. So, all right, we can go back to the slide, or we can leave it here, whatever's easier.
Probably.
Leave it there?
Leave that there.
All right, leave that there. Mark, right?
Yeah. Mark Johnson, Boylston, Mass. Hi, everyone. I just have a question, and it's about, do we have a representative from the Berlin Finance Committee here this evening? Because Howard was nice enough to come forward and give an overview of what our tax levy is in Boylston. And if I recall, correct me if I'm wrong, didn't Berlin have to go through multiple special town meetings to get budgets passed? I see nodding, right? So I'm curious, what is the appetite of Berlin residents? Because I can say, for the category, I'm not trying to pit us against them, but in Boylston, I imagine the first budget, the March 11th one, or whatever other budget we come up with, people in town will come out and vote for it. And Berlin doesn't seem to always be the case. So what is the appetite for Berlin residents, and what can we do to, as Boylston residents, what can we do to help Berlin residents? What their tax rate is, they have a split tax rate. They have I think it's 12%, $12 per thousand for residential, and then they have like 25 for business, but I guess little business they have, whereas Boylston just has one rate. But I'm just trying to figure out big picture, since we are one regionalized district here, which means we're all in this together. How can we, as Berlin residents, help Boylston residents, help Berlin residents? What can we do as residents of both towns? That's just my question. If there's a person from Finance Committee I can put on the spot and throw under the bus here. No? Worth a try. Mike, thanks for this. That's just for you to laugh.
Sir, please.
Boylston, Mass. I have a first grader and a third grader at Boylston Elementary School. I'm going to piggyback on what Mark had to say, also the other gentleman from Boylston, whose name I didn't catch. We have created a very nice echo chamber in this room of everyone here supporting the original budget or the May 11th budget. The people who need to hear from you are not here. I want to applaud some members of our Boylston Town Administration who are here. So Howard, Jamie, for many years of support of our schools. I see Dave Garza over here, Mark from the planning board. Boylston representatives are here in the room, they're listening, and they're participating. If there's someone from Berlin here, please raise your hand. I want to acknowledge you as well. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it, right? But the people who need to hear from you are the Berlin Finance Committee and the Berlin Select Board. None of them are in the room tonight. Take this same energy you have tonight and go to their next meeting and ask these questions to them, because everyone here, I think, is in agreement, including the members of the school committee. So thank you very much.
No.
Hello.
Name and town, please.
Nyara Kaplan, 13 Bigelow Drive, Berlin. I am a first grade teacher at EMS, at least until June. But I came to EMS two years ago, and I was met with nothing but support from the amazing teachers, Mr. Campbell, and some of the amazing parents you see here today. Thank you very much. But I'm not here today to save my job. This comes from knowing that you are the last person on totem pole, and that's okay. I am here for my son Cash, who had just turned 5 in December, and who will be with our amazing kindergarten teachers next year. I am here for my 10-year-old daughter, who is excited about maybe doing Lego robotics at Tohoto soon, or playing soccer at Tohoto eventually, right? We live here, we're community members. I'm speaking up for my first grade class. My 14 students who are soaring. They're amazing, and every day they come to school ready to learn, and they come to school and they're met with the support that we can give them that they need. Because of these literacy coaches that we have, because of the math tutors that we have, because of the small class sizes that they have. I also want to highlight what it would kind of look like in a classroom of 27 students in second grade. So it includes very minimum, if not zero, opportunities for small group instruction. Education is hard. We know it's not a one size fits all. We can help struggling students in small group settings and students that are above grade level in small group settings. We can't do it in whole group settings. It's very hard to do. We'll see a lot of increase in probably behavior issues. You know, if you have kids, you know, if one leaves the house, it's easier to manage, right? Try 27. And we already talked about the lasting impact this will cause as they move through the grades. I'm just here today to plead that we take another look at the message we want to send these kids. And we take another look at how we are going to, with this budget, impact their lives. I think there needs to be another way. And I speak for them, my kids, my students, and this amazing community. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes. Name, please.
I'd like to remain nameless. I am not one of Missy's students. I'm too young, no too old. Jason and Carol, maybe a quarter of the people in the room know me. I wanted to give a different perspective as kind of an outsider in a way. I'm from Clinton, so I'm 9 years in school choice, thanks to John and Lisa. I want to start off by thanking everybody in this room, especially the people at the table. Aaron, Al, you guys have worked crazy hours. I have a rough idea. So I just want to let you guys know that even when you don't see a full room in here, us parents really appreciate everything you're doing. And we don't take the numbers on the board the wrong way. We know that you guys are against the budget that you're having to put forth. And like some other people said, I think I'd like to think everyone in this room is against the budget. You know, I cannot vote but I would, vote nay a million times if I could. One thing I wanted to say that wasn't really, was touched on in a way by Adam a minute ago, is that, even though I'm from Clinton, I'm kind of a Berlin person because my daughter went through Berlin, and so I kind of feel part of that town. But last year, I had one of the most frustrating days of my life watching that vote at John's school. And I felt horrible for the school committee and for the people, the residents of Berlin. And I don't think a lot of the Berlin residents even saw what was transpiring. You didn't get the whole picture because the school committee and the administration here for Berlin, Boylston, and Tohoto worked tirelessly all year to cut back, to get to that bare bones budget. And then when they come to get your vote, you guys all showed up, the Berlin residents showed up in force. What I would like to think was to vote for what we needed for the schools, but instead, the FinCom of Berlin pushed as hard as they could to reduce the number yet again, as they had done multiple times last year, to cut it back, whatever it was, 200,000 more at the 12th hour. And they strong-armed our school committee and our school admin to present a budget to the Berlin voters that was no good for our school system. It's only going to hurt us long term. And if we do that, if we vote yes again this year, either town, it's going to be the same thing. This is just going to, get worse every year. It's going to snowball like the voters can't imagine. So the residents who don't want to see the $11 a month increase are going to be stuck with a $30, $40, $50 a month increase in 2027, 2028, if they don't stand up against the finance committees this year. So I strongly suggest you support the school committee and vote against this budget and do help with whatever you can. I can't vote and I'm not paying the taxes, so it's easy for me to say this, but it wouldn't surprise me if the taxes where I live are at least as high as the median in your two towns. And they're building new schools where I live. And, so unfortunately times are what they are. And because we don't talk a lot about school choice, other than when we're talking about the budget with the smaller groups here. But I would like to add that I'll consider free cash. You guys heard the Boylston Finance Committee member explain further how free cash works, and it's not guaranteed money. Well, I want you guys to know that school choice funding is guaranteed money. So we looked at, some of you who saw the March 11th numbers saw $850,000. It's a lot of money. But what I want you guys to know real quick is that Lisa Lucifera, rightfully so, has tried to limit school choice every year the last few years because we've had to. And even though my kid is school choice, I completely agree with that. We can't send 100 kids. In a few years. So if we're using that now, know that, in 4 years from now, you people with first and second graders are not going to have that. It won't be that $850,000, maybe zero. I really don't know what that means, but I know it's not good long term. I'm not a finance guy, but. And just to add to, real quick, the last year, I think that scare tactic was horrible. That's what I call it anyway, so I apologize if I offend anyone, but I think there's more, even though the Berlin town is small, it's still only about 3,500 residents, there's more than enough parents in the town of Berlin who I strongly feel would pay a little bit extra to support their kids. And if even half of the parents, again, it's like, you got to say 500 parents go and vote. They only have 500 voters every year. So if even half of the parents show up and vote against this budget and for the March 11th budget, it'll pass. So as long as you guys rock the vote,
Mike, I have one quick follow-up question to what the gentleman was saying. I want to make sure I understand functionally for everyone watching at home or everyone here, that we're going to have two budgets on the warrant, the March 11th budget and this cut budget. Is that correct, what we're going to have?
No, that's not
I want to make sure that you are crystal clear on what is the actual, everyone's saying vote against this budget. Okay. Will the alternative be on the warrant for people to vote for? To make sure we are crystal clear with our actions here.
So I was gonna cover that later, but no, there will be one budget to vote on in May. Whatever that budget is, I don't know. We hopefully will figure it out tonight. Whatever that's gonna be, there won't be options. There won't be a recommended, not recommended. There will be one budget. That budget either passes or fails. If it fails, so be it. We go to the special town meeting. There's a process to follow. We learned about it last year in Berlin. I'm sure Boylston kind of followed along and has an idea. It's just what it is. It's not our control. It's not our rules. We don't have any say in it. It's the way the state has set up regulations. So there will be one budget to vote on in town meeting for schools in both towns. What the number will be, I don't know, but that will be one number. We've got about 40 days to come to terms with whatever it is, so information will be out there. But yeah, there won't be vote against this budget for this budget. It'll be one budget, you either vote for it or against it. By the time we get there, you'll know what it is. I know last year's communication sucked. It did, and we've already, it's not free, it's not. There will be much better communication about what it is, what it involves, what it entails.
So we're potentially setting ourselves up intentionally for a subsequent follow-on town meeting, correct?
Not necessarily, we don't want to. We want it to pass it.
So we just have to wait to see what actual budget you guys are presenting, because right now we're talking about vote against this one and support this one, but we don't actually know what's going to be on the warrant until you guys aren't done with it.
We'll know tonight,
Right?
we'll know
Okay.
tonight. Effectively, there's a budget. We voted a budget on March 11th.
Yes.
That's the budget. If we do nothing right now, that's the budget, March 11th.
Yes.
That would be voting
Where-
support of that budget.
Yep, we're discussing right now if we want to adjust that at all based on what the towns have asked. All right, and that's what we're gonna discuss after this. But whatever that discussion brings, we'll decide, there'll be a vote. That will be the budget. There's not, I've already told Al, there's not gonna be any last minute in a really hot gym trying to figure out nickel and dime here and there and using this and that. Whatever we decide is the budget's gonna be, the budget's gonna be.
Appreciate it.
And we're, just to add on to that, we're hoping that conversations, like Mike said, between now and we have to go to town meeting, that people are gonna be inviting us to conversations to talk about, from the community, like, let's talk about this and come to another understanding, right? But the school committee has to give us at least a budget to move forward and have those additional conversations with the town.
Appreciate it.
And I know you asked if anyone here from Berlin, I don't know if Howard is still here, or Jamie's still here, but part of my plan later today was to suggest, yes, we're gonna get through this. Starting in September, we kind of brought this up at one of the earlier meetings. The chairs of the FinComs and select boards, both towns, Al, Aaron, whoever the superintendent might be at the time in September, we don't know, you're up in August. So whoever that is, come together starting in September and just figure out why there are these issues every year. We already know we're gonna be talking about the regional agreement, possibly suggesting some amendments to that to make it a little bit easier to calculate. So I am asking Howard and Jamie are still here, no one from Berlin, but I will be asking them, I've asked them already. let's start in maybe September, start to figure this out so that when it comes to November, December, and now March, we're not doing this again, because here it is 7 o'clock on a Tuesday, we've got dance lessons and soccer's about to start off and all that, everybody wants to get home, but that is the plan going forward. There's all gonna come out tonight, so I'll just bring it on now.
And what Mike just said is very common, right? So we're the district that Aaron and I worked with before, that was very common for us to get together and have these conversations. So this process so far has been smooth up to right now, but I think certainly could be an early conversation that we start in the fall, right? And start engaging in those conversations.
Yeah, for the record, Aaron, Al, Aaron, Dan, before Aaron, have been talking and meeting with Kristen in April and select boards and FinCom back in October, November, December. There was a meeting in February. So there's no more of this, anybody refused to cooperate nonsense. It's not true, it wasn't true, it's not true now, and as long as I'm here, it's not gonna be true. So that's what it is. Appreciate it.
Kind of to go first off,
Name down, please.
Lindsay Tatnall, Berlin. Just to kind of piggyback on that individual, I don't know his name. So just to clarify, because again, I agree with whoever said it, like Berlin didn't show up. Full transparency, they didn't show up to the first meeting. And I don't think that, I think Mike owned it, it wasn't communicated well. So that's why I'm just looking for clarity. So the total March, even with the cuts made on March 11th, those are unacceptable. Never mind the additional ones. So are we going back to a full brand new budget, or those March 11s are already out? Those are done. So we're losing contracted paras, health teacher, literacy coach, those are already cut. Is that correct? There's no going back to the board and saying, hey, we need that additional 304 plus 145.
That's correct.
I'm correct on that?
Yes.
And just one last statement, just for clarity, people, so we have to give this to the both towns so they can get their work together to present their town meetings. They have X number of days, they have to go to print as well too. So all these assessments need to be in order and ready for the towns, be able to put it to print so we can go to the town meetings. I think it's April 2nd, April 9th, both towns are looking for that by that soon.
So can I ask another clarifying question? Did the townspeople of Berlin miss out on the meeting of the cuts on March 11th?
They were here.
Oh, no townspeople were here.
Yeah.
Like, did we get the opportunity
Oh,
as
yeah.
taxpayers? Did we
We
get
had
the
this-
opportunity?
It was in
to-
the, yes, it was in the auditorium and no one showed up.
That's great. Okay, we're,
Should have been the paper. Yeah.
What do you,
Yeah.
Julie doesn't think you're asking the right question.
No, I think you're asking the right question. Say what your question was.
so my
We
question is,
We don't weigh it. The school committee votes the budget.
That's my
based
question.
on the
so
principal
we don't get to
and-
weigh in that we
No, no,
just cut
no,
those
no, no.
304.
Just like tonight with the public comment, that was available March 11th. In the auditorium, at a meeting that was posted, it was in the newspaper, it was on social media, there was an agenda on the website, it was in
Okay.
John, Cindy, and Lisa's emails, it was in Al's emails, and, yeah, nobody showed up.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I guess today, I appreciate the voicemail, by the way, Al, that was very fabulous. But like, I don't know that I've talked to any parents in Berlin that were aware of these March 11th voting on cuts. And I'm seeing shakes of heads in the audience because these directly affected the children.
Sure.
Okay, good to know.
I've already spoken, but I'm not allowed to ask a question.
Hold on, Jason.
I was gonna say, there's a FinCom meeting.
Hold on, everybody hold on, everybody hold on, okay? She had her in, you don't want to.
Yeah, I just want to say there's a FinCom meeting tomorrow night, if people want to go,
Perfect.
7:30.
Berlin.
And also, I was at the select board meeting last night, they're having an informational session on April 17th, I think it's 7:30 as well, so people need to like show up to these things, but that may be too late, obviously, but FinCom, I don't know, my God. But FinCom tomorrow night, 7:30.
So the comment is that there's a Berlin FinCom meeting tomorrow night at 7:30 in Berlin town offices, and you said April 17th is a select board hosted information.
About the budget.
When it comes to these town meetings, I don't know, we struggle with this every time. I mean, there's a website for agendas that's posted, there's emails that go out, newsletters that go out. It's, communication goes out, social media posts go out, BBRSD, town, school page, Facebook page, emails go out. I mean, there's a lot, but yes, we have to actually look for it, read it, not throw it away, not delete it, not skip over it this week because I'm busy at work or whatever. It's a constant battle. We can't afford to do robocalls every time there's a meeting. We can't afford to do mailers to every house.
I'm not asking for every time, but if you're making significant cuts in the
Yeah.
classrooms for the kids, that's a big deal.
Yeah,
Like-
I know. And
Yeah,
folks today.
this got attention because the league was triggered.
So, so the.
What made people come tonight?
Because they were very specific.
It was a
It
big
said
deal.
athletic director, it said second grade teacher.
Yeah.
That's
That was not like that on our.
Hold on. None of that information was posted. Former member Julie Lee.
Oh, no.
There she goes.
None of these specific cuts were posted tonight, but it was sent out the same way. I think the only difference tonight was there was actually no newsletter email about it. I didn't see it, or maybe I was the wrong one. But there was a voicemail from Al, but that went out at like 3:00 or something. So it was late today. There was a post last night on social media that I made. I made posts March 10th or 8th or 9th, whatever day it was, on social media the same way. It was the same time, same day, Tuesday, 5:00. I really,
Alex Del said tones on our.
So I don't know, I mean,
You told the PTOs,
the PTOs.
but that was
a
not
message
before
out.
March 11th, that was after. So once you did that, I know in
I think
Boylston,
PTOs had it, we're not
they
gonna
did,
argue,
yeah,
we're
they
not
did
gonna argue over
the
that right
Facebook
now,
post was
but
after. Yes.
everybody's here now, and we're here now, and we would have been here whether there are people here now or not, so here we are.
And just one last thing, we're talking about people's livelihoods, people's personnels. So we did not give out specifics until we had the chance to have the conversations with our principals and directors, and they could have those conversations as well. We're just trying to be respectful. They're still our employees, we will continue to be our employees. So that's why we're not giving out those specifics until the last possible.
Am I allowed to ask a question even though I've already talked?
Yeah, go ahead.
It'll, maybe you can speak to a couple procedural things. So if we presume that the March 11th budget goes forward, Berlin is not in danger of hitting its levy capacity, assuming you take the capital stuff out. But operationally, Berlin's not in danger of hitting its levy capacity. But I understand Boylston is. So back to the whole, if we say we're gonna leave in that 35 cents for Berlin, but that means we have to leave in the 65 cents for Boylston. Like, is there capacity to do that? Like, are all the, how does the mix of the two towns and the different budget situations come into play?
That'll be part of our discussion.
Okay. The other part was a clarifying question related to what I think Lindsay was trying to get at is the March 11th number. I think it's my understanding that you can come down from that right up until town meeting, but we can't go back up. So once you vote down, is that what we're stuck at? But we cannot vote back up again?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Name for town, please, ma'am?
Julie Lee.
I'm sorry, I didn't, can I clarify one point that was, someone had mentioned one thing here?
Yeah, all right,
With your
yes.
March 11th meeting that we held in the auditorium, someone mentioned that there was not a lot of Berlin personnel there from the town. I disagree. Mary, the FinCom in Berlin was also present.
And she's like,
As was Scott Hopkins.
The Berlin and the Berlin FinCom and Select Board did come March 11th.
Yes.
As did the Boylston, as did the town administrators.
Yep.
It's
Okay, I'll go really quick,
Kinda
because I know
sugar
it's like
this
sitting
way.
here for 5 hours.
Yes, Julie,
You know, so fast, I speak quickly too. So I'm Julie Lee, from Berlin. I have 4 kids at Tohoto, so I want to speak to Tohoto really.
Thank you.
So all 4 of my kids went through the elementary school, and the elementary school is fabulous, and I'm flabbergasted these cuts are even happening. But at Tohoto, for people that have elementary school kids, you can't understand the middle high school until you're really there, because you're so focused on,
all the elementary stuff, and literacy is so important. And you guys, the teachers of the elementary schools, all do such a good job to get them ready for that middle high school. Cuts at the middle high school are devastating, crippling. Cutting a music teacher, when music is something that just enhances the academic prowess for the kids, is devastating to those musicians. There's certain kids, and we know these kids, I have kids like this, that they might not necessarily perform in an academic classroom, but when they come from guitar class, back to that science classroom, they're ready to go. You know what I mean? So cutting a music teacher at Tohoto is, we should be outraged if that's even happening. How many music teachers are even at Tohoto? Two. So we cut one, so now we have one for grades 6 to 12 for all the music classes. Keep in mind, your electives, when you come into 6th grade, the majority of them are music related. So now we remove that. So what do we have for electives for these kids? Lego robotics, which is awesome, but there's not really a whole lot, right? There's there's just not a lot. There's not a lot of
Lego
stuff.
robotics isn't.
Okay, Lego.
We don't have the.
We don't have that anymore, okay? So I don't
Right,
know.
we won't. Well,
I don't know, but I'll tell you, I have a 6th grader, I have a 7th grader, 8th grader, 9th grader, and 11th grader. And I hear it. I have so many kids at my house all the time. These kids don't want to stay. They don't want to stay. They don't want to stay because the athletics program is struggling. Our fields are underwater all the time. We don't have a full-time athletic director. That's getting cut. We're going to a stipend position. How does that even work? I would just wonder, I would ask the committee, how does that work? Who does the buses and the schedules and the uniforms? Who helps the coaches? Who supports them? We're also helping teach our kids. It's just, I would reject this budget, stomping the whole way through, 100%. I'd reject the first one too. But I really would.
Last call, anybody else? Okay, was that someone asked? All good? Okay, so public comment period is now over. There's no more back and forth public comment, but school committee is now gonna discuss what we heard tonight. Before we do, I don't know how you guys wanna go about this, but I'd like to make a suggestion. I'd like to suggest that we start by looking at the capital first, because I think we could probably find some more agreement on that side of things. And like Al doesn't support this budget. I don't support the operational budget either. I mean, so I want to suggest to the committee, but we can talk about it, we can discuss it, we'll take a vote. I don't want to touch the operation budget from March 11th. I don't want to touch it. I don't know what that means to you, Aaron, or how you're gonna figure that out. I don't want to touch
That's what it
it.
means. It means exactly what you said.
Yeah, but I think we can probably figure something out on the capital side and make numbers work somehow. That's what accountants do, they plug stuff, get in trouble. I don't know if that committee is into that or not. And so that's my suggestion. We don't touch the operations side, we work on the capital side. I want to say two other things before we get started. One is just, the budget process. We talked about it a little bit. Regional school districts are separate than regular single town school districts. They're an entity unto themselves. They don't have any ability to raise funds like taxes. They have to go to the member towns. But they're an entity unto themselves. The state of Massachusetts actually has regulations written that says the regional school district is the one who sets the budget. Al doesn't set the budget, John doesn't set it, Aaron doesn't set the budget. Regional school district sets the budget, obviously with input from Aaron and Al and John and everybody else. I don't need to keep going, Cindy, but you're wearing black, you're blending into the purple wall, so we can't see it. So that's that. And then the regional school district or school committee sends that budget to the member towns at town meeting, to vote at town meeting by the appropriating authority. The appropriating authority is not any other board or committee in the town. It is the town meeting, in our case. The town meeting accepts by voting for the budget, that's the budget. there are other things involved that could cause issues, problems. I don't know, but we have to figure that out. If the town meeting does not accept the budget and they vote against it, we do what we did in Berlin last year. We come back, the committee discusses it again, approves the second budget. It can be the same budget, it could be a lower budget. That gets sent to the town again. The town select board would then call a special town meeting, just like they did last year. They have 45 days to call it, I believe, once they receive that new budget. And if it doesn't pass then, we get to July 1st, then the state steps in and says, this is what you're gonna pay. I don't care what your school committee says, I don't care what your town says, the state says, this is what it's gonna be. We've actually heard from the state, DESI, this year. We have a couple of letters. They're in the presentation from March 11th. They're available to anyone who would like a copy. The state says, don't do what you did last year, basically.
And let's be really clear, excuse me, we don't want to get to that point where we're 1/12 budget, right, where the state takes us over. It's sort of like getting an allowance each month to pay our bills and to pay everything we need to do. To Mike's point, we were extremely close to that point, and are still working with the Department of Education. The most recent letter that came from them said they feel that they're in good hands what we're doing now and continuing to do the work, revisit our regional agreement and develop a strategic plan. That's literally right from the Department of Education saying that that's the work we need to do. And just one last thing about Mike was saying about a regional. So I use this analogy, some people like it, some don't. We really operate like the Vatican is supposed to operate, right? The money we receive from the towns, we get that, and that's our money, right? We use that and have to budget that all year long. We don't get a chance to go back unless we have to, or there's an emergency to go to a town meeting. Unlike a municipality, when I worked in Worcester for 30 plus years, you get to go back. Something comes up, something takes place. We got to go back and discuss it. COVID happens, whatever takes place. That's not necessarily true in a regional agreement. So let's be clear about this. The money we get when we go to town meetings and they vote on it, that's the money we have to budget for the entire year. So just be aware of that. And the last thing, just for clarity, I'm not going to have Aaron and school committee agrees the changing of numbers, publicly right now with school committee is giving us input. We have another school committee meeting scheduled for Thursday at noon. No one likes to try to figure out numbers in front of all these people, and everyone becomes an accountant all of a sudden, trying to figure it all out at the same time. So we don't want to do that publicly. We'll figure it out with the information we get from school committee. Work on that, Aaron and I, tonight, tomorrow, and get ready for our school committee to present it at noontime on Thursday.
Yeah, and the noontime Thursday meeting will not be a deliberation of let's cut additional things or add additional things. It's simply, we're gonna figure it out tonight, no matter how long it takes, and then Aaron's gonna figure out the number, and we'll just come together to officially vote on a number that we can get that delivered to the towns in time. Okay, so I suggested starting with capital, but does anybody have another idea?
2-minute recess for the bathroom.
That's a lot of people. All right, Jess? Yeah, Jess, we can have 2 minutes. 2-minute recess.
Yeah.
That's gross.
Okay.
It's so
Wow, you're giving it all up right there.
All right. We rolling? All right. Thank you, Jess. That was needed. Thank you.
Yes.
All right. So I suggested that we start with capital. Aaron might have a suggestion as well. You wanna?
So I think it's fair to say the messaging we've received from the town is largely that the Boylston capital number that we have up there is doable within their free cash. The same with Berlin. The Tohoto number is very small. I would suggest going with the numbers we've presented for capital in this budget, right? We can't really go down from the March 11th numbers, or we can't go up from the March 11th numbers. I might suggest we look to retain the operating budget for March 11th with some of the sort of smaller savings that I've kind of picked through, right? So, we reduce our OPEB a little bit. That's not the state requires that we make some effort towards funding our OPEB. I won't get into the long, arduous conversation about what OPEB is, but there's no mandate that we put a certain amount towards it. So as long as we're contributing and we're making some effort, that's a fair effort. Some of the other items are smaller and they're things I think I'm willing, they're following trends, right? So the nurse substitute, I think, was probably budgeted a little high relative to what it trended in the past. Does that present a small bit of risk? Sure, but it's not that much risk. I think I'm comfortable taking some of those items and even looking at some of the supplies cuts that we talked about. Like, I think we all have to, think about, some small tightenings of the belt, and that's fair. But if what I'm hearing, right, is that sort of that March 11th might be a bit of a line in the sand for the people here in the committee, maybe that's worth looking at.
Joe, can you put slide 5 up there?
Oh, yeah, I can.
Because that's the one that we're talking about. So, all right, so for the committee to discuss this. Anybody have any question? Go ahead. Jess, we'll start with you.
I have a statement.
Okay.
So March 11th budget was put forth with a really close eye from Aaron and Al to try to cut things, knowing things were tight for both towns. We had 18% in health insurance increases. The town of Berlin has 19%. You can recognize that things are blown up everywhere. And so there was little small cuts made, as I said, with a scalpel to really try to cut down costs without affecting the children. And so looking at some of these things on 311, knowing what they were, not a huge fan of them, but we recognize that cuts had to be made to try to balance the increases in other areas. So yeah, as a parent, as a school committee member, not a huge fan of this. As I said during the meeting, I'm not thrilled with it, but there are things that can be absorbed, but still maintain the education for our children. So I just want to make that comment about the 311 budget, not ideal, not something I'd love, but something that was necessary to try to meet Boylston and Berlin's ability to pay. So just before we continue the conversation, I just want to point that out, that was made with hesitation, with thoughtfulness. And, I want to thank Aaron and Al and all the principals for looking at where they can cut and to absorb things to try to reduce that, to avoid tax increases for everyone. We know people are on fixed incomes because of that. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Yeah, I think everybody shares that comment with Jess. We'll just come down the table. Beth, do you have anything?
I agree with Aaron about the small savings that we've identified. If we've identified them from the 311 budget, I fully support implementing the savings. It mirrors what at least the town of Berlin has been doing, cutting teeny tiny things. I think it would be a show of goodwill to cut these small savings we've identified.
Meg?
I'm also in favor of cutting, like reducing the OPEB and, you know, I don't know about the long-term subs, but, or the supplies, I don't know, but I agree about maybe, you know, I'm fine with those, you know, the $15,000, you know, so I know we're not gonna vote tonight.
We are going to vote tonight.
Oh, all right, so, but
We're gonna vote on what.
Not a
we're-
budget, but
We're gonna vote
direction.
on what we're going to cut or keep, not a
okay,
number.
so, yep, I agree with that on all fronts. For capital, I'm reluctant to vote to bring Tohoto down that low right now. Just because that's really, really low. I don't know if there's any wiggle room anywhere on that, just after seeing that chair. Berlin Memorial, I'm fine with voting on that capital. I don't think we need to vote in Boylston on capital, because I think it's the same number.
Yeah, okay. Lori?
I am staunchly against getting rid of the second grade teacher. My first year teaching in Berlin my first year teaching ever was 1996. I had 19 students in my class, and Principal Salty said to me, "You have the largest class to ever go through this school." And I mean, it was a beautiful number. It was, they may have thought it was big, but it was just right. It was 19. And we've been blessed to have smaller size numbers, and we know that the more that you can be one-on-one with the teacher, the better it is, which is why Berlin prided themselves for so many years on having small class sizes. I could not support that. I have issues with getting rid of band, for the very reasons that Julie talked about, so important. There's a math component to that as well, and the tutors as well. I just think they're really, really important. I like the ideas of the minuscule reductions, like the OPEB and the long-term subs. Those feel, they're not gonna impact the students as much, and it's really about the teachers and the students and the education that we're getting.
Lisa?
I'm totally against getting rid of the second grade teacher. It just seems impossible, untenable, and we have so many long-term problems. I don't think we can do that to the kids. And also the band, that would be a tragedy. It would be a tragedy. So, and I guess I'm just wondering, like, is this gonna happen every year? Is it gonna be this difficult and this expensive every year? I mean, do costs, you know, I know there's limitation, but is it ever gonna correct? So that someday we can have nice things, or? Is there any sort of way for the town to like find new revenue streams or get more money from the state?
Yeah.
Like, are those the only two?
Well, think about it from your household perspective. Inflation has gone up, eggs are up, right? Groceries are up, oil's up. If you've got to do a renovation project, let's say a tree falls on your house, you got to fix your roof, you got to repair a window. Have you tried to hire a contractor lately? It's expensive. So what do you do at home? You come back and you look for another job and you tell your boss you need a raise and your boss tells you that's not possible and, you know, what do you do?
I just,
Al, you want to say
I
something?
do, kid. So I just want us to be careful, because it sounds to me like we're negotiating against ourselves, right? And we agreed on a March 11 budget, and also now we're trying to, like, well, maybe we should go a little bit here, a little bit here. I just don't want us to be negotiating against ourselves. I think that a lot of these things are still in flux, right? We're hoping that we're not gonna have a bad winter. We're hoping about this. We're hoping that we're not gonna have sped transportation changes. We still have negotiations we're dealing with. There's a lot of things we need to be mindful of when we're making this budget here. So I just want us to be careful, and I appreciate that we're looking at those little narrow cuts along the way. That's the work that Aaron does so well. We work really hard with everybody, but I just don't want us to negotiate against ourselves. Why are we making it easy? We should be having those conversations with the towns and saying, what can you do for us before we negotiate against ourselves? Just some of the.
So speaking about the little numbers, right, the 5,000, the 6,000. So that, again, back to the DOR calculator, that tax impact number. I don't know why. I don't know if I'm doing it wrong or if it's just the way it works. I'm not a tax calculation expert, but if I put in 5,000 for the town of Berlin, it doesn't even compute a number. So it's so tiny, right? So it doesn't compute a number. I believe it works in ranges. Like I think it might start, if I put in like 7,100, I think it might start to show me $2.50 of a tax impact for the year, so. Are those gonna make a difference if something happens between now and town meeting? You know?
Yeah. So, I am fine with keeping the budget from March 11th, but to all of these people that showed up tonight, please come to town meeting. I think in Boylston, it sounds like we're gonna be okay, and we're gonna have the support of the FinCom, so it's not gonna be an issue at town meeting. But just to be crystal clear, if the school committee does not support these cuts tonight, that means the Berlin FinCom, as of right now, is not going to support this budget. So all these parents that were outraged tonight, it's gonna be even more important. Like, I think somebody spoke up about the meetings and showing up at these town meetings, because we tried this last year, and I know at town meeting, Jason Carroll spoke to it. We literally the schools lost by what, like, was it 7 votes or 9 votes? Granted, it was like at 11:30 PM, and the children were falling asleep on the floor, but, I mean, you've gotta get your spouses, you've gotta get everyone there. So I think I guess my point is, I think I'm total agreement. I'm not voting to cut a teacher. I'm not personally, or the tutors. I can't, it's not in me. I don't think it's a good idea to get rid of that teacher at Tohoto, the music teacher at Tohoto. But people, you gotta show up, you gotta stay for the whole time. I know it stinks, and you gotta vote, you gotta be there. Or we're gonna have the same thing as last year.
So the only thing I would say is I would be careful how we talk about what other town boards might or might not do in the future. We only know what they've told us so far.
Yeah, as of now, so we have no idea, they might approve that, you're right, but as of right now, they've asked us to make these cuts. Al didn't just do this because he felt like it. This is being.
That wasn't fun for you.
Yeah, so much fun.
Okay.
So yeah, but the point is, please show up and vote.
Are we, let's take this in pieces if we could. Are we ready to vote on the capital side of this?
I just have one question
Yeah.
about the capital. For the Boylston capital, and I understand that you wanted to use the full amount. I'm just concerned about the plan that Joe's putting in place. If we are replacing the devices only at Boylston, does that throw everything?
I mean, it would throw it out of whack a little bit, but we'd be able to adjust. And for those that don't know what this conversation is, Joe has been working with just remind me of the committee,
Student success.
Student Success, in coming up with a 5-year technology plan. So
There's more students at VES, so more of them are going to be breaking it.
I just wonder, like, what, if they're getting them as like 5th graders and they're taking them to Tohoto, and then the BMS kids are coming up with their broken computers, and now
So.
Is that how it works, Joe?
No, so the plan was to replace them as 5th graders and then cycle them down. They would stay in that building. They wouldn't leave the building.
Okay.
So as we replace them at BMS or BES in the 5th grade, we would cycle them down. And then we had an extension of the plan at Tohoto to replace them in 6th grade, and then again at 10th grade, and then cycle them through the system that way. But they would stay within their own school building.
Okay.
So under this plan, only Boylston Elementary will be getting new devices.
Yes. For next year, for next year.
For next year, yeah. Yeah, that's not for everybody, right?
Correct.
Okay, so we're gonna do a vote, or are we ready to vote? Does someone have another question?
Let's vote.
Okay, so we're gonna vote on capital. Aaron, help me out here. Are we, well, I'll just put it this way. So can I have a motion, please, to approve the capital line items as presented in this budget version? Aaron, if you could go to each slide, please.
Can you just go to school?
Yep. For Berlin Memorial, it will be to replace the elevator controls and to add replace cameras.
So moved.
Jess?
Second.
Megan? Any questions, discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone against? Okay, this motion passes the Berlin Capital. May I have a motion, please, to approve the Boylston Elementary School capital items? Repair water pump, window repairs, update cameras and fobs, student staff device replacement, repair exterior brickwork, and accessible playground equipment.
So moved.
Megan,
Second.
Jess, any questions or discussion here? Okay, that motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone against? Almost pulled it. All right, that motion passes. May I have a motion, please, to approve the Tohoto capital request for middle school furniture?
So moved.
Lisa,
Second.
Jess, any questions or discussion here?
That's so low. Can we hold off in a couple more days and see if we can squeeze a little bit more free cash?
I cannot
Well,
believe
that-
that.
So the problem is this comes from Boylston's operating, right? So this ends up in conflict with each, right? So it takes, the more we put in here, takes away from what Boylston can do on the operations side.
I get that.
Right. Right. I mean, things are going to, devices are going to come to a head next year. I mean, we know that. We can limp through this year. We've had those conversations. You know, I know everybody wants to say this is the new building. It's not that new. You know, it's going to start getting long in the tooth, and if we aren't prepared for some capital expenses in the future, you know, we're going to be remiss. But I think in order to preserve operations for now, I think this is the best we can do.
So if the cash is certified and there's more, are we able to vote?
Yeah, I mean, they could.
Can we make this go?
They could come to yeah, I mean, the towns themselves can always offer to increase. We can't increase. The towns, if somehow their money tree blossoms in the backyard, they could come to us with money. You know, so, you know.
Did that motion get moved in second?
Yeah.
Okay, anyone else questions or comments? Anything at all? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone against? Okay, that motion passes. So we have a capital budget set now, so Aaron will figure out the exact dollar amount for us on Thursday for that. Okay, more discussion on operating budgets. Let's start with, could we please start with Boylston instead of Berlin, because this one's. So Aaron, is it correct to assume you're recommending to stay with the March 11th voted number for operating budget for Boylston Elementary?
Sure. I mean, I was suggesting, you know, some of those small cuts you could do, but if the committee, I hear Al's point, you know, I think we're all just throwing out ideas. If the will is to stick with the March numbers, I can support that as well. That's, you know, I'm not trying to.
Please know, that was just my point of view.
Yeah.
That's the school committee that made that decision.
Yeah, we're trying to, I think to some degree, we're trying to be the best partners we can be with the towns as well. You know, it's important that I think we think about where they sit. So, you know, I think you're right, though, that, you know, some of these numbers are small enough that may not be, you know, it may not be that consequential.
Yeah, the bigger numbers are the 40s, well, here,
Yeah.
43,000. I look at my handy dandy trusty calculator and I go to, thank goodness for internet access. I go to Boylston and I put in just 44,000, let's just say. It gives me a range of $7.50 up to $46.50. Again, not set in stone, not the actual number that you see on your tax bill. I'm not a tax accountant professional. I'm not qualified to advise anyone on how to spend their money in any way, shape, or form. Not a lot of people are. But that gives us a guide, $7.50 to $46.50 for the year in Boylston, if we keep that band number. And that number is so small, I believe it will be similar in Berlin. I think it might come out to 5 to 37 or something. So, yeah, a $5,000 cut, what's it gonna do? I don't know, but we have an option here, so the option would be to move to accept or to stay with the March 11th budget or to move to adjust the March 11 budget by some number. Would anyone like to make a motion?
Oh, wait, Mike.
Yeah.
So this number in Boylston is actually better than the March 11th number.
Right.
But it's dependent on if you make cuts.
So this impacts to Hunter.
Okay,
right?
that's what I wanted to
So
understand.
if
So
if you
it's
keep
only
these
if you-
ads to Boylston,
you have to
you're
keep the
cutting
cuts
to
at
Hunter.
Tohoto.
Right.
Okay, that's all I wanted to understand. So, yeah, I
Yeah.
think, so could I'd like to make a motion to keep the, March 11th budget for Boylston Elementary at 200, or, no numbers, right?
Cuts.
As stated
Okay.
on March 11th.
Okay, that's a motion. Does anyone second?
I'll second.
Gloria, would anyone like to discuss, Jess? You
I'd like to amend that emotion.
Right.
All right,
To add on with the subtraction of the OPEC contribution. So we
okay,
have to-
that is a motion to amend the motion to subtract $5,000 to OPEB from the March 11th number. That's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Lisa, second. Okay, any discussion?
Having watched the Berlin's Finance Committee to the last minute, like at 10:40 at night last Wednesday, like they were slicing everything out of the budget. And I recognize they're trying to recognize, people have limited income. And I think if we can shave off a little bit here, a little bit there, I think every little bit counts. And it shows that we recognize limitations, but are not willing to cut band and music and stuff for our children.
Jess, it's a fair point. Correct me if I'm wrong, if we went back and added up all the yellow numbers, 933,000 total was already cut on March 11th. We have some unknowns. April 1st is the date, that we have some unknowns that we haven't met yet. We don't know, it's only a few days, we never know. There's other unknowns that won't happen, so, but that's the motion, that's the amended motion on the floor. Aaron, did you have anything to say?
Yeah, I guess what I would definitely say is, I mean, OPEB is the safest thing you can cut.
Okay.
You can't eliminate it. It's not going to go anywhere but there. We can have long discussions of OPEB, and I have plenty of opinions on it, but it's inconsequential if you cut that. You
You
just
feel
can't.
we're adequately funded right now?
No one's adequately funded.
I knew
Yeah.
that.
For the record, this is the Boylston number we're talking about, Jess, was that what you were saying?
Yeah.
This is the Boylston number we're talking about.
Just Boylston.
You're aware? Okay.
Yeah.
I think if you don't do it in Boylston, or if
You
you,
want to be equitable.
yeah.
Yeah, I think we
especially
do
for
it
that,
across
yeah,
the
you
board,
can't-
OPEB across the board.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Which Boylston's up against their levy limit too, so.
it's just Boylston's share. Yeah, and I know they're looking for.
Does this impact Taunton? If we did this?
OPEB? No, there's just,
Okay.
We
Yeah,
can
I mean,
cut 15,000.
Only the admins. Okay.
yeah,
Five.
yeah, it's good.
So that's the motion on the table, is to
Alright.
amend the motion to approve the March
Bless you.
11th Boylston Elementary School operating budget minus the $5,000 contribution to open. That's the motion on the table. It's to amend that motion.
Yep.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone against? Okay, that amended motion passes. Now the motion is to approve the elementary operating budget as amended, reducing it by the $5,000. Is there any question or discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone against? Okay, so we've adjusted, that motion passes, and we have adjusted the March 11th operating budget in Boylston Elementary School by $5,000. Okay, we should be Berlin next, probably BMS. So we're gonna do, I assume we would wanna do the same here? Yeah?
I mean, what are these I hate to cut supplies. It's like, I don't want them to like, then I remember, right? Because
That
then,
was about, does this include like the clips and the copier and all that stuff?
Yes.
Oh, they're different.
It's classroom supplies, right?
Oh, they're printing
It's
supplies.
paper, pencils, erasers. I mean, again, we're trying to find places where we can like try to find something, right? Because in the aggregate, all of these cuts, if they were all together, might save a job district-wide. That's kind of, where we're coming from. If the supplies unto themselves aren't significant, so I mean, if all the other things are on the table, to Mike's point about what's the value of $5,000, I'd argue like, you could put it back. I'm not, I think, again, I will say OPEB is your safest thing. It's not huge. There's no mandate that you put a certain amount each year. You just have to put something and show effort. No one is fully funded on their OPEB except for Wellesley, I think. And they did some stuff to make that happen. And no one's close to funding their OPEBs. It's just, so I would argue that that's probably this, if you want to make, some sort of conciliatory cut here, that becomes, something you could do and it's safe.
But the only thing I'd say besides OPEB, every other reduction that we looked at was made from this side, everyone, principals and administrators. So before we think about putting money back into supplies, we want to have a conversation, what does that total look like, and is there a position that might be instead? So every one of these things we've agreed upon as a group, and I said that before we make any additions back, if any comes back, we'd sit as a group again to have these conversations as principals and directors. Before we start saying supplies here, supplies here, supplies here.
But $10,638 is not a position. You'd have to come to us with that times, 5 or 10
Yeah,
to
but
save.
15 could be
Yeah.
para, right? So if you combine the last 3 items. It's not significant, but it's chopping a little, carving a little bit off the sides.
All right, fine.
Anybody
So
else
do
have
you
any
wanna-
comments? Lisa, Lori, Beth?
I'm in favor of doing the 5,000, 5638.
Okay.
Is the school district comfortable with that?
I mean,
Can I just ask, Alex, can you explain that comment that you just made about the teachers and how it affects? I want to make sure I understand that.
any reductions that we talked about, we had individual conversations with principals and directors, and we had a meeting as a group to discuss and let everybody knows. And if any additional funding should come back, I made a promise to them, because, by the way, once we make these decisions, myself included, all of us here, we we move on, and they gotta live with this stuff, right? Our principals and assistant principals. So I said to them, if there's anything that should change, I would have the opportunity, which is hence the reason why we have school committee scheduled for Thursday, that we have a conversation with the people over here to say, are we good? And people over here too, by the way, sorry, I'm just, but to make sure that we all are okay with these decisions that we're making.
When you say funding come back, you mean us deciding not to do the cuts?
That's right. Or anything, right? Or anything that I feel like we should be having that conversation. We made those conversations when we made these reductions, and I just feel, and I think it's really good that we're having a school committee meeting on Thursdays for us to be able to just even have these conversations, even if they all just say yes. I won't put them on the pressure to answer that question now, but we leave, we close the doors, I walk away from Berlin, Boylston, and Tohoto, and they still gotta live with these decisions that we make, so I just wanna be fair to that.
So, John, if I could ask you, what supplies and tech repairs is included in that line item?
That would be everything, crayons and pencils and paper and chart paper and graph paper, paper clips, everything that a kid uses every day. Now, in fairness, some parents are very, very generous and, provide a lot of supplies and provide extras, but we have a growing population of people who can't afford the supplies that their kids need.
So that's your entire line item?
I think it's the entire line item.
Yeah, I mean, we largely just sat and said like 10% across the board,
Yeah.
unless there's other items, like in conversations with principals, we had lines that they specifically cut for reasons. If we had cut those and we'd come to a really specific number, I didn't want to cut those. I cut the other lines where we kind of said, okay, it's a bunch of pencils, I'm not going to carry over largely what we had last year, right? Is there's only so much you can do down to, I can't really sit down with John and worry about every single pencil he's going to buy. I need to realize that in the aggregate, he's going to need some number of pencils, right? So we kind of said, well, could we cut that by 10%, right? Some of those lines. So again, it's not every line. We looked at them carefully, and the ones that had discrete amounts in them, we were careful not to cut because it had very specific, whether it was software or consumables, things like that, that John had identified. It's the more generalized, like here's a bunch of supplies, and we typically buy pencils, crayons, construction paper, whatnot out of it. And that can change year to year based on the needs, based on what's sitting in a closet somewhere, things like that.
And just like the towns don't micromanage us in terms of how many pencils you buy, how many rulers and all that, we give that as the instructional leaders, that's their authority to buy and purchase what they feel they need to.
All right. Could I have a motion then to approve the March 11th voted Berlin Memorial operational budget less the 5,000 to OPEB contribution?
So moved.
Megan?
Second.
Yes. Question, discussion?
I think we should add in the subs too.
Sorry.
Sorry?
Sorry. I think we should add in the subs as well,
You mean getting rid of the subs?
minus the subs. So I'm just floating an amendment out there. I mean, if we need a sub, we need a sub. We're gonna have to pay for it anyway. This is just trying to reduce the line item. Yes? Is that correct? Right?
Yeah, I mean,
We take it from something else.
It's, this was looking at trends for the past 3 years. So whenever I go through something like this, I look at 3-year trends and see where it's trending at. Looked like there was some room here to work with. Long term can be a little, 1 or 2 maternity leaves can eat that up very quickly. But you have to kind of hope that when you're looking at sort of a 3-year trend, right? We're dealing every year, our total number of teachers is relatively small. We're dealing with small sample sizes, right? A lot of big numbers. The inverse is there's a lot of small numbers. You're going to have a lot of variance, right? So, our hope is that we don't have something goes through the water and we have a lot of maternity leaves, or we have, things happen that just cause a lot of long-term leaves. I mean, but, no doubt there was, I can look at the trends and I can see the COVID baby boom, right? Like right after COVID, I tiled my back / other people made other choices, right?
So every dollar we cut right now today doesn't come back in case there's an unknown in the future.
Yes.
And the future is like 3 weeks.
Correct.
And the part about the subs, just so you know, so they're creative as heck, right? So they beg and borrow and do what they need to do to cover those classrooms, which is not good for our kids as well either. But also there's a limited number of subs that we have available as well too. We're all fighting for them, right? Worcester, all the surrounding communities, everyone's fighting for subs.
I mean, no matter, like, if there's a long-term sub need, we're gonna have to cover that. I mean, that's not piecemeal that can be
That's right.
done for that.
Agreed.
So I think it's just reducing that line, like looking at the trends and
But
hoping.
you're saying we're gonna have to cover that, but we're gonna have to cover it with less money in the bank, is what you're saying.
We have to cut something else. We'll have to do a vote to move money from another line item, probably move it from supplies. And then like 2 years ago when they ran out of paper at the end of the year. So I mean, like, I don't know,
Next question.
Lori.
Is it equal in Boylston? Are they cutting 5,000 over there, or do they,
For OPEB?
no, not for OPEB, for the subs?
No, we just took that out.
No,
But that wasn't even on there as
their trending was consistent with what's there. So, again, I look at 3-year trends. I try to say, if it increases a little bit, plan for some increases. Again, it's that sort of, our hope is that in the aggregate, we're going to have some things that go over budget, some things that go under. And in the aggregate, law of big numbers, that it's pretty smooth. So, we may go over in long-term subs, we may be under in short-term subs, we may be a little over in oil, we may be a little under in supplies. John's crew goes for a few fewer crayons, right? What have you. I mean, that's, where it ends. Like all of these numbers are sort of best guesses at any point. We are, more than a full year out from the fruition of a lot of what we're talking about here.
So my point
And I
in asking
can't
that-
predict crayon use that far out.
My point in asking that was just the quality across, like if we're gonna offer, if we didn't risk anything in Boylston, I just feel a little worried about that with the word risk there.
Yeah. And the risk, Lori, is just like, we just don't know, right? We're trying to save a little bit here, a little bit there. You know, we don't know what's gonna take place in terms of the amount of subsidies. And that's why the risk is that much. Bless you.
So the motion on the table includes only reduction for OPEB right now. That is the motion on the table. Anything further?
I'd like to make a motion to include the long-term subs, to amend the motion.
Motion has been made to amend the motion.
Second.
Lisa is second. Comments, discussion? Anyone in favor of the motion?
Aye.
I heard Jess, Beth,
Aye.
and Lisa. Anyone against the motion?
Nay.
Nay, sorry.
Well, I'm also against the motion. That motion fails. We're back to the original motion. Only the 5,000 in OPEB contribution. Any further discussion on that? Okay, all in favor of this motion?
Aye.
Anyone against? Okay, that motion also passes. So the Berlin Memorial operating budget will be the March 11th budget less the OPEB contribution of 5,000. Okay, Hunter, please.
Joe, could we go to the next?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm
Sorry.
I'm looking at my own sheet thinking everyone else is seeing this as well. Sorry. I'm using the force here.
Okay.
It's not working.
Remember at the Tohoto discussion, any changes are going to affect both towns differently. Okay, so let's just get the motion out there so we can discuss it. Could I have a motion, please, to approve the Tohoto Regional Operating Budget to be the March 11th budget less the OPEB contribution?
So moved.
Megan?
Second.
Jess? Okay, discussion, questions?
I just feel like we've cut enough from Tohoto, and I would just keep some of that little stuff in there because you know something's gonna happen, and I didn't realize we were cutting a science teacher on March 11th. I mean, that's just like gut wrenching right there.
So we had that FTE in there, but we weren't specific until
I
we had this
know,
conversation.
I get it, and I know what we're trying to do, and I just feel like that school is compromised enough, and I'm not willing to vote to compromise anymore for that building.
And let's also be mindful of that special ed coordinator position as well too. There's gonna be a cut, a huge cut as well too.
The AD.
All right, any other questions or discussion? Okay, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Anyone against? All right, that motion also passes, so I think that is our budget. Is that correct?
I can start working on it tomorrow, for Thursday.
All right, so that's our budget, so we do not have the number yet. Aaron will calculate that tomorrow. We'll have a quick Zoom meeting on Thursday. That meeting won't include any additional cuts or additions, and then that will push us off another 2 days and past our deadline to get these numbers to Berlin for the printing, the warrant. All right, I think, what?
People need to show up and have conversations, right?
Yeah. Everybody knows what the meetings are, when they are, they're posted, agendas are there, just like to show up. Town meeting, I believe is May 5th. I don't know the exact time in Berlin, it's 7?
Usually 7.
7 in Berlin, at the elementary school, in the gym. Probably gonna be babysitters available through the PTOs.
Yeah.
Okay, we got
They do.
PTOs here, yep, well, that's a
They do
solid.
the school votes last though.
The school, that they,
Yeah,
well,
I think they're
hold on.
moving it to there.
Hold on, I don't know how they're gonna do it this year, we don't know how they're gonna do it this year. Historically, yes, it's at the bottom of the warrant, but, we have no say or control over that.
Just I think they're restructuring from meetings that I've watched, they're gonna do them in sections. So
Okay.
they had good stopping points if kids had to go to a different day, so I don't think it's
However they're gonna do it,
Plan accordingly.
there will be information that comes out from the towns that explains exactly what they're gonna do. That's what the printing is, they're printing all that material, that's what we gotta get into, so. Yeah, so pay attention to your mail, pay attention to your email, pay attention to your voicemail, pay attention to your social media, pay attention to, I don't think we can afford to send mailers out, but we'll figure something out. But we have a whole other meeting to get to.
Thank you for coming tonight.
Yes.
Thank you very much for coming tonight. That was very important for you to hear us.
Okay, that takes care of the first item on the list.
Are we gonna fly
Oh, yeah, I did. I thought I apologize. No, I didn't want to go to the website. You're joking. You're joking. Oh, so this is, that's done. Do you have a serious,
Feel free to sit. Where you going?
Oh.
So we still have a meeting in progress, we still have a meeting in progress.
Yeah.
Meeting in progress. All right, so.
You have a lot of other things on this agenda, Gabe.
I know.
What's up with that? Yes. I need my strength.
So sorry. Joe?
I need my strength. What you sign me up for? How much like you want me to work?
Not right now.
You good? Sure. Sure. You good?
All right. Next up on our agenda is, Matt. Matt here?
I don't think he's here.
That's okay. All
Thank you.
right. We'll talk to Matt at the next meeting.
I'm listening. I am. I'm right here.
Now, we've got a meeting to get to. It's
Okay.
10 past 10 o'clock. We're making good time.
Yeah.
Now we can do
Just
it.
one. I'm working as we're feeding. Okay, I'm ready.
All right, okay, shot clock, here we go, Al.
Okay.
We got graduation requirements for the FY '25 school year.
Yes. Lisa, if I can just, first of all, those who didn't have an opportunity to see Lisa on Spectrum News, she did a great job, interviewed by Spectrum News regarding the MCAS and how we're handling it in our district. I think I shared the site with you guys as well too. But Lisa, this is a lot of ownership on me. I think the semantics, we had some error in the way we proposed it to you guys at school committee. The MTA reached out to Bill Whitehead and Bill reached out to us. MTA was concerned about the vote that took place in the state of Massachusetts and the semantics of the way that we read it at school committee. So I'm going to ask Lisa, just give a little brief explanation and we can just have them re-vote if necessary.
So the last school committee vote focused on whether the district would continue using MCAS as a graduation requirement, as this was the most pressing issue. However, the legislation, it was very complex and it was very misunderstood. At the state level, MCAS served two purposes: graduation requirement at the state level, as well as competency determination at the state level. The Commonwealth voted to eliminate MCAS at the state level for a graduation requirement, which also ended its use for competency determination. As a result, each district was now responsible for defining its own graduation requirements, which may include MCAS if they vote for it, and determine which courses demonstrate competency within math, ELA, and science. Our focus on that vote was on whether to maintain MCAS as a graduation requirement for the class of 2025, which we voted to do with plans to revisit that decision this summer after receiving further guidance. However, we did not vote on the courses which would fulfill the competency requirements. So those that would reflect the standards assessed in the 2023 MCAS exams for ELA, math, and biology. To meet the state's competency determination and this is what we've been doing, but we just need to vote on it. Students must pass 9th and 10th grade English or an equivalent course, pass geometry and either Algebra 1 or Algebra 2 or equivalent courses, pass one of the 3 core science courses, biology, chemistry, or physics. These courses have always been previously required before students took the 10th grade MCAS, as they are still required courses to earn a diploma at Tohoto. In summary, while we have chosen to retain MCAS as a graduation requirement for now, we have also identified the courses aligned with competency standards. This clarification is intended to prevent confusion if MCAS were no longer a local graduation requirement. So we just need to vote on competency being determined by passing 9th and 10th grade English, passing geometry and either Algebra 1 or Algebra 2, and passing one of the 3 core courses in biology, chemistry, or physics.
You have that written all down, thanks.
I did.
Jessica, or Beth, do you?
I took notes. So,
I actually printed it out for everybody.
Oh, thank you, Lisa. So those classes you mentioned, those are currently graduation requirements to graduate from Tohoto.
Yes. Yes, and though.
But it's also our competency as well too for the state of Massachusetts.
So just saying yes.
This is the competency
Just to
requirement.
clarify.
That's right.
Yeah, we voted on the graduation requirement, we gotta vote on the competency.
That's correct.
Yeah, I got it.
And then we will revisit this summer whether we're going to continue to present to school committee, whether we're going to use MCAS as a graduation requirement for our students.
So this is just this year, 2025.
No, well, the competency requirements will remain the same. So what we're voting, or what you are voting on, is identifying the coursework that meets the competency requirements for students. That's different. So there are 2 things. There's graduation requirements and competency determination. We're required to make sure we have both in place.
In competency, we're trying to make sure that when you graduate from a high school in Massachusetts, it is comparable, right?
Right.
It looks the same. Graduation requirements for Tohoto look, I can tell you, completely different than Minichogs look like, right? They had additional credits they wanted to take. There were different things the school committee voted on that they wanted to have. So again, we're just trying to clarify the language that we did. We sort of rushed to get that in front, so we wanted to make sure. But please know we're going to be working on whether we want MCAS to be part of the graduation requirement still during summer with everybody involved. The other part we have to tell you also is that every one of our seniors are graduating this year, so has passed the MCAS, and we're happy to say we'll be walking across to the graduation stage this year.
All right, so we need to vote on this right now. You want to vote?
Please.
Could I have a motion to, I know your voice is already good. You want to go for it?
You heard my nail? No, so I'm just you can make the motion on
Okay,
staff.
could I have a motion, please, to approve that meeting the state's competency and determination, students must pass 9th and 10th grade English or an equivalent course, pass geometry and either Algebra 1 or Algebra 2 or equivalent courses, and pass one of the 3 core science courses, biology, chemistry, or physics. Is that appropriate?
So moved.
Megan? Yes? Okay.
So, this is just kind of a temporary hold. We can always revisit this and add to it if we want, so like other districts.
And that's the work we're going to be doing during the summer, but not the competency though.
So there's still confusion. Graduation and competency are different.
Yeah.
So we can't really change competency requirement because the state has identified for us that the competency requirements, that we have to ensure that the competency requirements are the standards that were assessed in the 2023 MCAS for ELA, math, and science. So we have to identify which courses have the content that were assessed in the 2023, and we're saying, yes, we have those courses, though these are these courses, so we have those in place. Graduation is different. Right. Okay, is everybody clear on that?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone against? Motion passes, thank you.
Thanks, Lisa, nice job on that. We clarified that. Next thing is Teamsters Local 170. I just making us aware as a school committee and the public, we have been approached by our custodians that they are looking to become unionized. We got the official notification. Please know that I've taken that information and given it to our attorney, Sean Sweeney, and he'll start that process. We haven't heard anything more than that, but they're looking to become unionized at the local level with the Teamsters. And this is sort of just an FYI. Next on the agenda, and I'll move it quickly, is the district attorney's office presentation. I know this is something we talked about, sort of got delayed. It's officially on that April 16th date, starts at 6:00 p.m. We sent it out through Messenger, school messenger. I have it posted everywhere. I know our principals will be advertising this as well too. This goes along with cyber safety and bullying that's taking place in our state, in our country. But they did a great job with our students. And here's an opportunity for parents and students. We're going to do it all by Zoom, share that information. We'll continue to pass that information along. I know, Jessica, you've been asking for that date, so I want to make sure we're locked and loaded. We, along with many other people, we're reaching out to the district attorney's office for this.
Will that be live and Zoom?
Will it be live and Zoom? Yeah. No, we're not doing anything in person. We'll all be by Zoom, sorry. Last is the FY26 school year calendar. It is in front of you right now. Please take a chance to look at this. There's a lot of conversation involved with this. We've worked with principals and directors. We're still holding on 26, 27. We're hoping to get that to you soon, but this is for next year, 25, 26. I just want you to also look at this one piece of it that is highlighted the back page of your calendar. There is potential for an extra professional development day added to either the end or the beginning of the school year. We're working negotiations with that right now, but still that will not impact our students' schedule and our student calendar. It would impact our teacher calendar. But this is with, obviously, we've heard from parents, I've heard from school committee. There is obviously quite a large reduction in half days and more concentrated full days of professional learning. We have a lot of information we can share with you at another time at school committee regarding professional development days and the plans that we have. And taking a look, even the last message we received from the union saying that they were not at this point in favor of the half days.
Al, you looking for a vote for this night or just information?
I'd love to vote on it, but I think there's a bigger conversation. I think it's important to get that out to parents so they can start making plans. I think we'll hear that people might want to talk a little bit about professional learning. I would say that we have 3 full professional learning days, plus we're looking for a 4th one. I'd also like to have a conversation with second faculty meetings, that those are professional learning days, as well as second faculty meetings. But I guess I'd like you to look at it a little further, get this out to the community to look at. This is the calendar that we're recommending, but open to conversations.
So we're not voting on it tonight, it's just for everybody to start looking.
Yep.
Okay.
And just parents can start planning as well too.
Put
I'd
that
love to put it on the next agenda if you could.
No.
Okay, thank you.
I'm joking.
Seriously?
Come on now, boom. Next up then is.
Can we ask questions?
Yeah.
or-
Yeah.
Sorry. I'm curious, like, so usually we have our first day of school, like on a Tuesday or a Wednesday. I'm just curious why on a Thursday?
So it's just sort of like what we looked at in terms of the way the calendar fell and. Yeah.
I like it. I like starting Thursday. I think that first week is brutal for the kids.
I don't like starting before Labor Day. Al.
Next year.
I have to have 180 days for students and 185 for teachers. but I also need a buffer if there's bad winter, right? Hopefully not.
You better not. You better not.
Exactly. So I have to make sure, right, you can't go beyond that June 30th date, right, unless you get permission. It used to be from the commissioner, but just gotta be mindful of that date. Also, I'm looking at Juneteenth as well too, so all those things are being taken into account when we're getting this date.
So you got the last day of school is the 16th, is that what it is right now?
That's correct.
So,
Can I question the Good Friday? I feel like when you add, it has been on there in the past, and then when you take it away, like if you're gonna put Good Friday on there, you're gonna have to commit to continuing to do it just as it is.
So it's a year-to-year calendar. We had that conversation about whether we wanted to put Good Friday. We know a lot of people want to take that day off. So we put it on, and that's why this is open for conversation.
so 2 years ago, the Friday before vacation, Good Friday landed upon it. And so that wasn't great data, but I don't know what happened last year in terms of staff and students being out.
Right, and then, and this year, we're already starting to get.
Most school districts don't have school, as I learned from my church this weekend when they were trying to do something with the kids on Good Friday. And I was like, oh, our school district does have school. I guess Worcester doesn't, Shrewsbury doesn't. So a lot of the big communities don't. So I guess that's probably why a lot of staff are taking off, not necessarily for religious reasons, but because their kids are out of school and they can
So let's
stay
get
out.
some community feedback on that this week, and, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's good. My only thing, as long as everyone's okay with it,
I mean, it's a money saver, because you're gonna have to get subs, so.
A lot of subs.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, and there's
just-
not a lot of PD, there's not a lot of days off, so I like having, I know we have vacation that month, but it's nice to have, I kind of like having a few days here and there, right?
Yeah.
Just a quick comment, or just something to think about with negotiations as well, that currently the teachers do have so many religious days in their contract. So that is another reason why I think they try to take them, whether or not they are celebrating that day or not. So just something to keep in mind, calendar-wise, contract-wise.
But then they could.
However, administrators don't, but I'm just saying.
Maybe it's not telling people what to do about their religion.
Yep.
Okay, so anybody else?
We believe this is a great starting point. We believe this,
Yeah.
again, our biggest thing is getting it in front of parents so they can start making their plans ahead of time. We're hoping they take their vacation during their vacation times, right? If they know ahead of time, they can plan accordingly as well.
I'm just hypothetically, like if you shifted the beginning of the school year to a Wednesday, would that then in June, you would shift that last day to a Monday?
I like it, Wednesday, September
The
3rd.
last day is a Tuesday.
No, that's not what you meant. That's not what you meant. You mean,
I'm just saying, like, there's no camps, there's no, so it's, the half days have been a struggle for working parents because there's a lot of days off that they have to take. So it's front loading them.
yeah, and I would say on the other end of that too, just parents sometimes like that, summer camps end, right? So the summer camps are ending in August, right? They're all coming to an end. Families still need to find childcare as well too. So.
Oh, you mean starting after Labor Day, Jess?
No.
No, I don't.
Might still-
So shift the opening day to
We don't
the
have air
25th,
conditioning in the schools.
professional development day to the 26th, Tuesday.
You know how hot it is in
First
August?
day.
Gee, no, Mike,
The
tell
last
me.
day is on
Friggin'
Tuesday,
hot,
though, you
come
have to shift to 2 days to get the new week. The last L is on Tuesday.
Tuesday, and then you have Tuesday.
It's Lent. Can we,
It's just allow a little more buffer.
How about,
okay, can we
post this on social media, maybe internet,
Oh, I see what you're
robocall, whatever, and people can comment on it, and, we'll get it out there, I don't.
But you would have to put a big draft.
We're averaging one snow day a year
Print it and
though
hang
for
it
the past
from the
couple
roofs,
years.
I really believe this is we
And
need
we're
to get
banking
this
on a
sooner
warm
than
winter,
later
guys.
out to people as well too. It's March and April, so soon, so.
Yeah. All right, okay, cool,
Calendar is
thank you.
always such a hot topic. Joe?
Yes. Yeah. So I'm done for school calendar, but I'm gonna ask Joe, if you could give us a little update of what's going on.
Sure, so we've had kind of an increase in public record requests. So as a district, we've kind of streamlined the process. So if in moving forward, if we could just direct everyone to the district website. They go to our district, they click on public records request. And it brings them to the request page. It tells them exactly how to request the records. It tells them who our records access officer is. So everything should be directed to the RAO@bbrsd.org email that will get reviewed by Nicole. And it also provides the public with just general information on the Massachusetts Public Records Law. Moving forward, this is going to take it away from people dropping off to the schools or stopping someone on the sidewalk. We want to direct everything to this platform, to this email, so it gets documented, time-stamped for all of our communications, so we stay in accordance with state law.
The clock starts ticking the minute someone releases that asking the question. So we're finding that we're getting it to different people, and we just want to try to streamline it, put it all in one place. And this way it's also timely, right? So this way Nicole, our resource officer, can timestamp when those came in. So we're just trying to streamline that. We want to make sure the public knows it as well as school committee.
Is that email accessible by more than just her though?
I'm sorry?
Is that?
Yes, it's myself, Aaron, and me. Myself, Aaron, and Nicole, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, that was sort of just an FYI.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Joe. That brings us to subcommittee updates. Jess, first with the student success and technology.
Yeah, we are kind of waiting on the next meeting, but we put in the drive the cell phone guidance from the state. Again, it's a really good document, so if you didn't have a chance to read it last time, I really encourage you to go through the whole thing and read it. And so in that vein, we kind of had a meeting several weeks ago. So on Friday, there was a cell phone free lunch at the Honto during Refresh Day. So we're hoping to hear how that went, and then, move on from there.
Megan, you better not have an updated budget. Do you?
No, no.
Heard it. You can.
No, you guys heard the budget.
All right. Superintendent search subcommittee, Lori, what do we got going on?
That's been postponed. We're gonna have another date, hopefully next week.
All right, the position has been posted though, right?
The what?
Yeah, Tracy.
Tracy posted the position.
Oh, sorry, are you talking about the search?
Yeah.
I thought you were talking about the evaluation.
I was like,
I apologize.
Did I say evaluation?
No, in my head, I just think, probably not.
It's too early.
The position has been posted. We got an email from Tracy today. Let me just review. We get a lot of emails today. She BCC'd all the members, and she's checking in. She left it that she'd be collecting proposed interview topics, so we need to get back to her with
Yeah,
that.
so I talked to her about that. If anyone has any proposed topics you want as part of the interview, send them in, send them to me. I'll collect them with Tracy, all right, or send them to Lori too.
Yep.
And on our end, we posted on School Street.
Yep, it's been posted. All right, perfect. There is no update for the policy subcommittee, but we're going to get together soon. We have quite a bit to do on that. Next up is we're not doing the calendar vote, so we're going to go right into the bus bid contract. And Aaron, I got to tell you, it's starting to feel like 2 years ago with buses.
Yep. So our bus contract has come to an end at the end of this year. I don't know if anybody's been watching what's been going on with bus bids lately. The increases are crazy. Northborough, Southborough had a 46% increase. I was talking to Winchendon. They had something similar, 46%. We put our initial bid out in January. We came back with a very high front-end range with some other increases. You can see it was around 28% above our 25 rates. We talked about what we could do. The industry standard in a lot of ways had been a maximum age of 7 years. We looked at that. We talked to some other districts, and a lot of them are moving bus ages can range. Buses are usable 10 to 12 years. Many people, in order to get some of those numbers, trying to get some of those numbers down, are going more like 10, 12 years as a max age. They all have to meet safety requirements. They're all heavily inspected, things like that. So, we're pretty confident that we could do that. So we put it out to bid again. We wanted to see what we could do. So the first time we only got one bid from our current provider. The second time, we actually had two bidders show up, NRT, our current bidder, and Green Wheels. Unfortunately, Green Wheels was not complete, so they were missing an essential document. Additionally, when I went down to their numbers page, their numbers were significantly higher than what NRT ended up providing. So down below, you have NRT's daily rates for budget for buses. Though you will see that's still a pretty significant % increase. Keep in mind, when we talk about health insurance, our health insurance number is big, right? It's a very big number. So an 18% means a lot of dollars. 21% to this is substantial. I will make it work. We've put in a number into the budget close to 10%. I think we can work with this. We really, unfortunately, no one's bidding on bus contracts in terms of other vendors. We're kind of left without a choice. It's made up of a lot of sort of small monopolies around the state. And no one wants to cross territories. There's really sort of unwritten agreements of a sort that, you just kind of hold your own territory. I've not seen more than one bidder on most contracts that I've seen. And when I reach out and I talk to my peers, they're seeing exactly the same thing.
So there's only one gig in town, right? That's what it comes down to.
Every now and then you'll see someone else come in and their number is outrageous. So the other number that we had was very much higher. So my recommendation would be to take this rate. I think if we were to go out again, we'd probably end up seeing a higher rate, just out of the pain of them having to bid it again. Again, I think I can work with this within the existing budget. I'm also a little bit hopeful that transportation reimbursement will be a little more generous this year. So I'm recommending it. I wish we had another option. I wish we had a better option. But this is sort of where we are right now.
And the sooner we finalize this, the sooner we can start the work, so we don't have it in place this past summer, right? And we'll have the bus routes all set. We'll look at the most efficient way to run those buses. We had a huge move, rerouting the buses in Berlin during mid-year. But we'll be looking to be able to work with that. We know our provider of getting that information, and certainly not doing like we did this year, the day before school starts, still not having bus routes.
May I make a request that we do it in both towns, like reverse the routes, say morning and night? I mean,
Yeah, we can
it
have
happened
this-
a couple of years ago, and I'm not sure why it stopped.
We're gonna
We
look
can
at
have
all
this
that, but we want, we make sure we have a provider first before we start engaging in those conversations.
Knowing that NRT is in place, we can start those conversations immediately.
I'm fine with this for now, but I think over the next 5 years, and I know we have so many projects on the list. Like I just kind of did a quick Google search, how much does it cost to buy a school bus? I mean, we're paying over $100,000 a year for like subpar bus quality at best. I mean, I don't know if it would be possible. Again, then you have the salaries of 5 people, right? Because you have to have, is it 5 buses the district has? 5?
There's a lot more to that.
The cost of the bus is the least of your concerns.
All right, so never mind, I guess $100,000 a year is nothing.
I think it would be great to look at some sort of collaborative option, right? Whether it's through a collaborative or through a group, how we could look into, with 9 buses, we're too small to operate that efficiently. We just can't. Where Al and I came from we had a collaborative, the Lower Pioneer Valley Educational Collaborative, that ran our buses. We didn't have to bid it. It was all part of sort of our assessment with them. And when we looked at sort of what their cost was versus private vendors, it was substantially lower.
I think it would be a great conversation to have with our attorney, Sean Sweeney, and by the way, keep apologizing, looking back.
No, he's on his way into it. No, I don't want
He's
you
here
to
somewhere.
think I'm looking at you.
He's skulking around somewhere, yeah.
So I apologize, I keep So, he is working with Worcester right now that just purchased their own buses, so I think, to your conversation, I think it would be great to have with our attorney eventually to see, give him some perspective on it.
So Megan out there changing oil, working a wrench.
No, well, do the ledger.
So,
Lunch.
Aaron, this means we're up a little bit here, but it also means our bus reimbursement revenue
Will go up,
So that's cool.
Yeah.
But that won't be for like 2 years until.
Yeah,
We'll have to pay
we'd
this
see that
upfront
the next
year.
Yeah, so we just need to get through this year and then we'll see some reimbursement for that.
Always good. All right, so we need to vote on this, please. Do I have a motion to approve the bus bid and contract
Just scroll down
from
to
NRT
the bottom.
as presented by Aaron?
Yep.
So moved.
there's a recommendation.
What?
The recommendation's right there too.
Oh, perfect. May I have a motion that the BBRC school committee authorized?
Oh, we
the
just
direct-
seconded.
That, I didn't hear a
No,
second.
there was no second.
There was no second. That motion was not seconded.
It was not seconded.
May I have a motion that the BBRC school committee authorize the director of finance and operations to enter into a 5-year contract with NRT Bus Incorporated to provide school bus transportation to the district at a total anticipated 5-year cost of $4,820,075.
So moved.
Megan. Lisa.
Oh, now.
That motion has been seconded. Would anyone like to ask a question or make a comment about it?
Ouch.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, 5 years, it's less than a year.
I'll chip in the 75 cents if it helps the
I-
district.
Let me put that in
And
the
Megan and I
calculator.
will try.
Write that down.
Yeah.
Okay, all in favor of the motion, please?
Aye.
Anyone against it? All right, that brings us to our last and final piece on the agenda tonight is an executive session, and will not return to open session. I want to be clear that this is regarding a new item, not any existing or previous items. But may I have a motion that the Berlin-Boylston Regional School Committee is convening an executive session under purpose 1 to discuss an open meeting law complaint filed by Margaret P. Stone against the Berlin-Boylston Regional School Committee.
So moved.
Megan.
Second.
Lori. Roll call, Jess. Beth.
Aye.
Megan.
Aye.
Lisa. Lori.
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes. We are going to enter executive session and not return. Thank you very much.
Principals and directors, thank you.